Chapter 575. The people from the 5 fourth-rate sects of West Cloud State had yet to arrive, but their aura had already arrived. It was obvious that they wanted to intimidate the martial cultivators present. They were so arrogant in other people's territory. It could be seen how much they looked down on Southwest Yangzhou. It was impolite not to reciprocate. Jun Changshao immediately ordered the disciples to release their cultivation and return the favor in the same way. Whoosh whoosh. In an instant, the disciples of the sect of all times no longer used the hidden cultivation technique to suppress their cultivation and release their realms in an instant. The aura that was difficult to detect with the naked eye rushed toward the 5 major sects of West Cloud State. Tens of thousands of disciples released their cultivation, forming a wave that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The surrounding branches trembled and leaves fell wildly. The martial cultivators of Southwest Yangzhou were stunned. Oh my God! The aura of these disciples was so strong that it felt like they were not mediocre at all. Humph! The 2 Wu Huang at the front had a trace of disdain in their eyes. They immediately released a little of their cultivation, as if it had turned into a big hand and pressed down on the incoming aura. Whoosh whoosh! The aura of the 2 Wu Huang collided violently with the aura of the sect of all times disciples. Although the martial cultivators present could not see it with their eyes, they could feel the cold wind whistling and their expressions changed again and again. This new sect with the potential to be in the top 3 was really valiant. They dared to compete with the aura of the 2 Wu Huang. Whoosh whoosh! The realm aura was still fiercely fighting in the void. Because the opponent was too strong, the sect of all times disciples could not resist and soon fell into a disadvantageous position and were pushed back. You overestimate yourselves. One of the Wu Huang from West Cloud State said lightly. It was undeniable that the aura of the sect of all times disciples was strong, but it was no doubt a fool's dream to shake a powerhouse of his level. Whoosh! Jun Changshao stood up and put his hands behind his back. The thick and sharp aura of the 2 kings of sword and martial arts erupted. Whoosh whoosh! The aura of the sect of all times disciples, who were retreating, stabilized the situation with the support of the patriarch's sword and martial arts and began to counterattack. Wu Huang frowned slightly. The young man in the ring had such a strong dual aura. He should be the patriarch of the sect of all times. Today. This old man wants to see what's so special about the sword and martial kings. Wu Huang stood where he was with his hands clasped behind his back. His majestic aura whizzed out and clashed madly with the power of the sword. It was a pity. Wanting to suppress the momentum of Jun Changshao and the other disciples with his strength alone was undoubtedly a bit wishful thinking. It's not. Under the relentless barrage of attacks, Zhang Xian's face was about to turn green, but he was still unable to gain the upper hand. With Jun Patriarch's current strength, when he unleashed the aura of the sword and martial kings, an ordinary Wu Huang might not be able to take advantage of him. Elder Qi. This old man will lend you a hand. Wu Huang from the West Cloud State immediately released his emperor's aura. However, he had just released his aura. Yi Xingchen, Zhou Hong, Jiang Ye, and the Ning brothers also released their auras. Whoosh whoosh! The wind howled, causing the trees to sway unsteadily. Crack! Crack! Many trees could not withstand the force of the wind and were snapped in half. Oh my God! The martial cultivators from Southwest Yangzhou all widened their eyes. The 2 forces had not met yet and had not said a word, but they were already competing with each other in such a thrilling aura. This was too explosive. 10 minutes later. Although the 2 Wu Huang from the West Cloud State were still releasing their aura, their faces were extremely ugly. Because even with the 2 of them working together, they still could not gain the upper hand. You could say that the sect of all times was relying on their numbers. But don't forget that they were facing 2 genuine Wu Huang. If it were other 5th-rate sects, with all their strength, not to mention fighting against 2, they couldn't even withstand 1. Among the martial cultivators who came to watch the battle, there was no lack of powerful ones. They were all amazed in their hearts. This new sect was indeed worthy of being one of the top 3 potential sections. They were not even afraid of facing Wu Huang. Little Long Long, who was lying on the arena, yawned and sent a sound transmission. "Master, do you need my help?" "No need." Jun Changshao said, "Go back to sleep." "Okay." Little Long Long continued to lie on the arena, and his eyelids gradually closed. "Both of you." Princess Red Lotus could no longer sit still. She stood up and said, "It's meaningless to continue like this. Why don't we each take a step back and have a friendly martial arts exchange?" "Humph," the two Wu Huang snorted and immediately retracted their auras of Wu Huang. They also realized that it would be difficult to suppress them if they continued fighting like this. Since someone was giving them a way out, they had to accept it. Moreover, they did not come to Xinjiang County to compete with their auras. The two Wu Huang retracted their auras first. Jun Changshao and the other disciples also did so. The area immediately became quiet. Princess Red Lotus. At this moment, a feminine voice sounded, "We haven't met in a long time, right?" The person who spoke was a slender young man. He stood behind the two Wu Huang with a smile on his face, giving off a gentle and refined feeling. Ling Yu's room. The young city lord of Lingting Royal City. The 10 martial kings and many disciples behind him obviously had enough respect for him. Princess Red Lotus said, "It's been 10 years. "Yes." Ling Yufang smiled. 10 years ago, your father brought experts from southwest Yangzhou to West Yunzhou and was beaten to a pulp. Although I was young at that time, I remember it clearly." Princess Red Lotus frowned even more. The martial cultivators of southwest Yangzhou lowered their heads in shame. 10 years ago, the two prefectures had a friendly spar. The 10 experts sent over fought 10 rounds and lost 10 rounds. They became the laughing stock of the Falling Star continent. To southwest Yangzhou, it was a shame that could not be washed away. Now, the young city lord of Lingting Royal City mentioned this matter. It was undoubtedly rubbing salt on the wound. Jun Changshao sat on the chair and looked at the smiling young man. He muttered, "This guy looks like he needs a beating." Ling Yufang smiled. However, in the past 10 years, southwest Yangzhou has developed quite well. A sect with the potential to be in the top 3 has appeared. As he spoke, he looked at Jun Changshao and said, "You should be the patriarch of Zhuagu Sect, right?" "Zhuagu Sect?" Jun Changshao's gaze gradually turned cold. It was rare to see such a person provoking him the moment he appeared. Did he think that because of his identity as the young city lord of West Yunzhou's royal city, he dared to be fearless in his territory? "Sorry." Ling Yufang shrugged and smiled, "A slip of the tongue, a slip of the tongue. It should be the sect of all times." Everyone was speechless. Everyone could see that it was not a slip of the tongue. It was intentional. Jun Patriarch. Ling Yufang smiled, "You won't be angry, right?" Looking at this guy's smiling face, Jun Changshao almost could not help but rush over and kick him to the ground. One does not hit a smiling person. Jun Patriarch smiled faintly, "Children speak without fear. I won't be angry." Ling Yufang's smile stiffened and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. Jun Changshao said, "Young Master Ling, why did you bring so many experts to my sect of all times from afar? I heard that your sect is strong and has been evaluated as having the potential to be in the top 3. Ling Yufang glanced at the disciples of the sect of all times standing below the stage. His eyes were full of contempt. "That's why I'm here to learn martial arts." Chapter 576. After Ling Yufang appeared, he rubbed salt on the wound and mocked the sect of all times as an ancient sect. He was definitely someone who deserved a beating. To be honest, this was the first time he met such a character since he transmigrated. If he didn't crush his dignity, how could he face the audience? The sect of all times welcomes everyone to discuss martial arts, but... Jun Changshao paused and said, "Will young Master Ling come personally or send someone else?" Ling Yufang smiled and said, "To show my respect, of course the experts of the West Cloud State will come and challenge your sect." Although this guy was arrogant, he wasn't a fool. He had more or less heard about the sect of all times. He definitely wouldn't go up this time. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "Young Master Ling, the people you brought won't do." Won't do? The two Wu Huang and 10 martial kings frowned. Ling Yufeng smiled and said, "Whether they can or not, we'll only know after we ask." Jun Patriarch, don't jump to conclusions. No means no. Jun Changshao said. The experts of the West Cloud State had ugly expressions. They couldn't stand being looked down upon by a young man. Ling Yufeng smiled and said, "Jun Patriarch, you're very confident. If you insist, I'll accompany you to the end." Jun Changshao said, "This life and death arena is my sect's challenge arena. Young Master Ling can send someone up to fight. In that case." Ling Yufeng didn't want to waste any more time and said, "Then I'll accept." He waved his hand. Swoosh! A tall young man jumped onto the arena and cupped his hands. Xingyan Sect's inner disciple, Wu Kuei, requests to fight. This person was tall and sturdy with thick arms. It was obvious that his external martial arts were very strong. "Yu Hua." Jun Changshao said calmly, "Go." Yes. Yang Yuhua stepped onto the arena with a burning gaze. He didn't expect that the Patriarch would let him be the first to fight in such an occasion. Jun Changshao and Princess Red Lotus walked down and handed the arena to Yang Yuhua and Wu Kuei. The martial cultivators who were watching the show couldn't take their eyes off him. The Xingyan sect was a rather prestigious fourth-rate sect in the West Cloud State. The strength of their inner sect disciples was certainly not bad. This battle was bound to be very exciting. Of course. As someone from southwest Yangzhou, he hoped that the disciples of the sect of all times would win. However, the other party had traveled such a long distance to cause trouble for him. How could the disciple who was sent out be ordinary? The chances of him winning were probably not high. Boom. A loud boom came from the arena, indicating that the battle had begun. The martial artists watching the battle widened their eyes in unison because the Xingyan sect disciple named Wu Kuei was forced to retreat continuously. He barely managed to stabilize himself at the edge of the battle zone, his face abnormally ferocious. Shwa! Yang Yuhua strode over and punched out with her right fist, which was imbued with spiritual energy. Boom thump! Thump! Wu Kuei stepped back once again, then staggered off the stage and coughed out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with shock. The martial artists who were watching the show were all dumbfounded. 2 punches sent the inner sect disciple of the Xingyan sect flying and causing him to vomit blood. The inner sect disciple of the sect of all times was too terrifying. "Thank you for letting me win." Yang Yuhua cupped her fists and said. Ling Yufeng flicked the black hair in front of his forehead and said to himself, "The sect of all times is indeed quite capable. It's no wonder that father sent so many experts." Yang Yuhua won the first battle. The martial artists who were watching the show could not come to their senses at all. This was because the battle had started and ended too quickly. There was something even faster. Ling Yufeng sent out the second fighter. Both parties had just reported their names when the disciple of the West Cloud State was sent flying with a kick from Li Tian. At the back, Sima Zhongde, Cui Bujian, and the other outer sect disciples were sent out one by one. Most of their cultivation levels were 2nd or 3rd grade Wuzong. Even if their opponents were 5th or 6th grade Wuzong, they could defeat them directly. Boom! Another disciple of the West Cloud State was sent flying with a punch from Hualing. Princess Red Lotus was astonished. This junior brother Hua was not very strong. He had just joined the sect of all times not long ago. Why did he seem like a different person? Jun Changshao said, "Young Master Ling, you've brought so many people. If you have to fight them one by one, it will take a long time. So, don't waste everyone's time. Just send a martial king." Ling Yufeng's expression was very ugly. In his plan, he had first used the disciples of the sect of all times to defeat the disciples of the Xingyan sect before sending a martial king. He did not expect that the first round would be defeated one by one. Elder Sunday Ling Yufeng waved his hand and said, "Go." Yes. Elder son of the Xingyan sect jumped onto the stage and released his aura of a 5th-grade martial king. The martial artists of the southwest Yangzhou were immediately worried. 5 fourth-rate sects had sent a total of 10 martial kings. Could the sect of all times handle them? Patriarch Ning Duzue, who had always been a man of few words, said, "I'll fight." "Go," Jun Changshao said. Whoosh! Ning Duzue landed on the stage and cupped his hands. "Elder of the sect of all times, Ning Duzue." "Ning Duzue?" Elder son sneered, "One of the Ning duo of the southeast Yangzhou. How can such a lowly person become an elder of a sect? This is the biggest joke in the world." Ning Duzue's gaze turned cold. Ling Yufang said, "Jun Patriarch, aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the people of Jianghu for letting such a person become an elder?" The martial artists of the southwest Yangzhou discussed in low voices. They had heard of the Ning duo of the southeast Yangzhou, but they did not expect them to be an elder of the sect of all times. Letting such a person hold an important position in the sect would definitely be gossiped about. "Young Master Ling," Jun Changshao said, "you don't have to worry about the people of my sect." Humph, elder son said indifferently, "In this old man's opinion, since Jun Patriarch recruited such a person, there must be a lot of criminals in the sect." Ning Duzue said, "If you want to fight, then fight. Don't talk nonsense." Elder son said with disdain, "If not for the arena, this old man really doesn't want to fight with thieves like you to avoid dirtying my hands." Shwa! Ning Duzue could not stand it anymore and stepped forward. Dense spiritual energy erupted and instantly formed a dense number of fist shadows. Before joining the sect, he was a 5th-grade martial artist, and he was still a 5th-grade martial artist. Although he did not break through, he took the body-shaping pill, spirit-tempering pill, and various kinds of tempering. His strength increased significantly. Boom! Boom! On the arena, there was a burst of crazy explosions. Thump thump thump. Elder son, who was also a 5th-grade martial artist, could not withstand the power of the explosion. The air wall collapsed and he staggered back. It could be said that he was in a sorry state. Bang! Just as he stabilized his body, Ning Duzue's fist with violent spiritual energy directly hit his face. Wah! This group of people was very energetic. Not only did Elder Son's blood spurt out, but 2 rows of teeth also flew out. Plop! Elder Son fell at the edge of the arena. He was dizzy from the bombardment. Ning Duzue walked over and directly rode on his body like an ordinary person fighting. He raised his fist and said, "I don't mind dirtying my hands." Boom! Boom! Spiritual energy spread and the floor shook. After a torrential storm of violence, Elder Son was beaten into a pig's head by Ning Duzue and fainted on the spot. Everyone's mouth twitched. This was a fight between martial king-level martial artists. In the end, not only was there no exciting battle, it was more like an adult bullying a child. Chapter 577. Plop! Elder Son, who had fainted, was thrown out of the stage. Just now, he was complaining about dirtying his hands, but now, his head was stuck on the ground. So, everyone was already an adult, so there was no need to act cool. Patriarch Ning Duzue stood on the stage. His hands were stained with blood, but he had no intention of coming down. He said, "I can still fight." Jun Changshao touched his nose and said with a smile, "Young Master Ling, continue to send people to fight." Damn it! Ling Yufang's eyes flickered with anger. It was acceptable for the martial king to be defeated, but it was not acceptable for him to be so easily trampled. "I'll do it." Xingyan Sect's elder who volunteered. His strength was 2 levels higher than Elder Son's. He was already a 7th-grade martial king. "Go," Ling Yufang said. Whoosh! Elder who flew up and landed on the stage. He said coldly, "Xingyan Sect's elder Hu Shao. Don't talk nonsense." Ning Duzue said, "Let's start." Hu Shao spread out his hands, and a majestic spiritual energy instantly spread out like a big net. Seeing elder son being oppressed without any power to fight back, he realized that the opponent was very strong. So, he had to take the initiative first. Spirit Explosion Seal. Hu Shao shouted. The spiritual energy that spread out crisscrossed and turned into a big hand that pressed down on Ning Duzue. His psionic powers gathered explosive power and created a matcha with the air. Instantly, a terrifying kacha-kacha sound could be heard. Ning Duzue sneered, took 2 steps back and stretched out his hands. Ho ho! The red power hidden between heaven and earth quickly gathered in his palms, forming a dazzling light. This was 7 profound sunglow break. After the Ning brothers joined the sect of all times, except for special martial skills like body metamorphose scripture, they had basically learned all martial skills. So strong! As expected of our elder. The eyes of the disciples of the sect of all times suddenly burned. They also practiced this kind of profound martial skill, but its power could not be compared with Ning Duzue's. Sensing the 2 crimson energies, Hu Shao frowned slightly. His hands once again formed a seal, and the explosive energy that rushed over suddenly increased in speed. Ning Duzue's face was expressionless. He stretched out his 10 fingers, and 2 beams of red energy shot out. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 crimson beams of light instantly rushed into the explosive force, penetrating through it at an extremely fast speed, and blasted onto Hu Xiao's shoulders with incomparable precision. This process was too fast. It was so fast that Hu Xiao had no time to dodge. It wasn't until his shoulders were pierced through and the intense pain spread through his body that his face gradually became ferocious. The martial skill he released also came to an abrupt halt due to the collapse of his mind. Shua! Ning Duzue arrived in front of Hu Xiao and coldly said, "Get lost." Bang! A punch landed on his face, and his entire body flew out like a kite with a broken string, before landing heavily on the ground. The spectating martial artists were all dumbfounded. The second elder from the Xingyan sect was beaten down so quickly. Young Masterling Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "Since you have come to challenge the sect of all times, you should show your sincerity instead of letting these shrimp soldiers and crab generals go on stage and embarrass yourselves." Everyone's mouth twitched violently. A high-grade martial king was described as a shrimp soldier and crab general. Jun Patriarch, you are really shameless. Kacha! Ling Yufang clenched his fists tightly, burning with anger. This time, he was ordered by his father to test this newly risen sect of all times. He thought it would be easy, but he didn't expect it to be so troublesome. Everyone! He suppressed his anger and said, "Who will fight with this thief?" Young City Lord Wu Huang, who was sent by the Xingyan sect, said in a deep voice, "This old man will go and meet him." Shua! As he spoke, he had already landed on the stage. Of course. He didn't want to fight with Ning Duzue, but with Jun Changshao and said, "I heard that Jun Patriarch is a rare martial king and sword king. This old man would like to experience it." Jun Changshao smiled and said, "You want to challenge this seat?" "That's right," Wu Huang said. This time, he didn't come here to fight one battle at a time and then decide the winner by winning. As long as he could teach this patriarch a lesson, it would be equivalent to completing his mission. Little Long Long, who was lying under the stage, became energetic and began to warm up. "Okay." Jun Chang smiled and said, "I have come to exchange pointers with the martial emperor." Little Long Long was stunned. Master wants to fight with Wu Huang personally? Yes. After breaking through to the 4th grade martial king and sword king, Jun Changshao wanted to see how big the gap was between him and Wu Huang. Jun Patriarch. Princess Hong Lian reminded, "This person is called Gutuhong, one of the 2 remaining grand elders of the Xingyan sect. His strength can't be underestimated. It's best to send Wu Huang. This woman thinks I can't beat him." Not only Mu Honglian, but when Jun Changshao took the initiative to fight, the martial cultivators present didn't think they could win. After all, this was a martial cultivator at Wu Huang's level. This kind of trash doesn't need Wu Huang of the Sect of All Times to fight. June Patriarch flew up and landed on the stage. He howled in his heart, although Elder Wei is Wu Huang, he has no combat ability at all. The disciples of the Sect of All Times had unlimited potential. However, in terms of peak strength, it was very awkward if they didn't count as contracted beasts. At the foot of the mountain, there was an open space. Jun Changshao and Gu Tuhong were separated by dozens of feet. One was the sword and martial king, while the other was a martial cultivator, Wu Huang. Therefore, they didn't fight in the arena. Instead, they chose to fight in a more spacious area so that they could fight freely. The patriarch of the Sect of All Times facing Wu Huang was undoubtedly very attractive. Many martial cultivators stood in the distance and stared intently. The number of times they blinked decreased, afraid that they would miss it if they weren't careful. June Patriarch. Gu Tuhong said with his hands behind his back, "How shall we fight?" "Let's use our fists first," Jun Changshao said. "All right." Gu Tuhong clenched his fists. Thick spiritual energy gathered and gradually solidified, as if he was wearing a pair of iron gloves. The system said, martial cultivators at Wu Huang's level have a strength of more than 5 million kilograms. The host should be careful. Okay. Jun Changshao didn't dare to be careless. He released his spirit armor and instantly materialized a silver-white battle armor around his body. Under the sunlight, it could be said to be dazzling. This guy was definitely not trying to act cool. He hoped to rely on the armor and the dazzling light produced by the sun to dazzle the opponent's titanium alloy dog eyes and help in the battle. "Can we start?" "Come on," Jun Changshao said. Buzz! As soon as he finished speaking, the space in front of him shook. A huge fist appeared out of thin air and came crashing down with a force of 10,000 kilograms. Boom! The earth shook and a violent wave of air whizzed out. It was like a ripple that spread hundreds of feet in an instant. The martial cultivators who were far enough away felt the momentum and were so shocked that they all retreated. Their faces were filled with horror. Just now. What happened? When the remaining power dissipated, everyone looked hard and saw that Jun Changshao had already retreated dozens of steps. His legs sank several inches into the ground and his hands were in a defensive position. In the battle zone. The space was still distorted and couldn't heal in a short period of time. Jun Changshao looked up and grinned. As expected of a martial cultivator from Wu Huang. This punch is powerful. Gu Tuhong's eyes were filled with surprise. He had punched out across space and Wu Huang was able to withstand it. This was really unexpected. Chapter 578. Boom! Boom! There were continuous explosions on the open grassland as psionic energy whizzed out. The spectating martial artists all widened their eyes. There was only one emotion in their eyes, and that was fear. In their field of vision, Gu Tuhong had his hands behind his back as if he was taking a stroll. In the void in front of him, giant fists were constantly condensing and bombarding. "Oh my God! He can fight like this?" A martial king exclaimed, "A martial emperor's control of psionic energy is terrifying." Without even moving his hands, he could gather psionic energy and condense fists in the void to launch a crazy attack on the patriarch of the Sect of All Times. This gave many people a new understanding of battle. A moment later, Tu Hong stopped and a smile appeared on his face. Even if that kid could withstand his attacks, his body wouldn't be able to. He was probably seriously injured at this moment. The next second, the smile on his face froze. After the air waves and dust dissipated, Jun Changshao, who was wearing a silver armor, was still standing. He grinned and said, "If this is Wu Huang, then I'm very disappointed." Oh my God! Jun Patriarch is actually fine. Even if he has copper muscles and iron bones, he won't be able to withstand such a powerful attack. What a joke! Jun Patriarch was protected by a spirit armor. How could Wu Huang hurt him with the purest psionic energy? Gu Tuhong said, "Jun Patriarch, This old man is going to get serious now. Huff huff, he opened his hands and a thick stream of energy gathered in his palms. Although it wasn't much, it was extremely pure. He's getting serious. Just now, he was just using psionic energy to gather strength. I'm afraid he's going to use martial arts this time. A powerhouse at Wu Huang's level has a far better understanding of martial arts than others. The increase in power is unimaginable. A few martial kings who were watching the battle discussed in low voices. Ta! Jun Changshao stepped forward, his eyes shining with passion. During this period, he had always faced all kinds of opponents with an invincible posture. Now that he met Wu Huang, he finally experienced the hot-bloodedness that young people should have. You rotten old man, let's fight. Under the support of its owner's strong fighting spirit, the armor once again became dazzling. Gu Tuhong raised his palms, and two streams of spiritual energy converged. Then, he waved the two fingers of his right hand, and the energy lingered like fairies. He said, "Finger of long eyebrows." Whoosh! The slender beam of light pierced through space and arrived at an extremely fast speed. Just as Gu Tuhong made his move, scorching flames erupted from Jun Changshao's body and rapidly converged together. Scarlet Heaven Raging Flame Slash. He roared angrily, and the flame chop seal condensed in midair directly met the attack. The scorching power tore through the space, and crackling sounds could be heard. Boom! The heatwave slash collided with the tiny ray of light. In an instant, two colors, scarlet red and bright white, rose from the ground. My eyes! Many cultivators covered their eyes from the blinding light and retreated backwards. They felt a burning pain in their eyes, as if they were being burned by flames. The pain didn't last long. After everyone gradually recovered, they tried their best to open their eyes and look, only to see that the space in the battle zone had been distorted to the extreme. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Wait a minute. Where was Jun Patriarch? Many cultivators saw the situation clearly and only saw the stunned Gu Tuhong. They didn't see Jun Changshao. He's in the sky, someone exclaimed. Whoosh! Everyone looked up at the same time and saw Jun Changshao, clad in armor, leaping into the air with a green broadsword in his hand. He shouted, "Water drowns the 7 armies." Whoosh! Whoosh! The green dragon crescent blade waved wildly, and several scorching blade chi whizzed out. The power of each attack was quite explosive. Humph! Gu Tuhong sneered. In the void, the fist seal condensed again and directly destroyed the incoming flaming blade chi. Ta! Jun Changshao landed on the ground, holding the green dragon crescent blade in one hand. Huff huff! Suddenly, colorful attributes surged out of the saber, and a martial saint with an aura that could swallow mountains and rivers appeared. Weapon spirit! Everyone exclaimed. Gu Tuhong's eyes suddenly became serious. It turned out that the rumors were true. This guy really had a weapon spirit. No wonder the Sacred Spring Sect Patriarch was defeated. Whoosh! Jun Changshao quickly rushed over. In the process, the blade surface of the green dragon crescent blade changed from green to red, blue, earth, and gold. Following closely behind, Wu Sheng's soul was also changing. The two could be said to be colorful. Gu Tuhong frowned. At that moment, he felt that the world was filled with 5 attributes, so he exclaimed, 5 elements weapon spirit? Whoosh! Jun Changshao soared into the sky, holding his saber horizontally as he shouted, I stand alone, colluding with you, walking alone, enlightening you with wisdom. Whoosh! 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 The blade chi slashed down fiercely. Ka ka ka, the space was ruthlessly cut apart. Activating the martial spirit, activating the 5 elements. These few slashes were definitely the strongest outburst under the cooperation of Jun Changshao and the green dragon crescent blade. It could be seen from his ferocious face. However, reality was cruel. Gu Tuhong's robe fluttered without wind, and incomparably dense psionic energy instantly spread out, as if sealing the entire space. Not only was the falling blade chi forcibly slowed down, but its power was also greatly weakened. Break! Bang! 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 The blade chi that contained the power of the 5 elements directly collapsed under the compression of space. Jun Changshao, who had not yet landed, was suddenly sent flying and then staggered backward. Crack! The green dragon crescent blade stabbed into the ground, stopping the momentum of retreat. No! Wu Huang was too strong. Even if the green dragon crescent blade had the 5 elements attribute, even if Wu Xing's soul was activated, there was still a gap. The system said, the difference between the martial king and Wu Huang is not only in strength, but also in the understanding of heaven and earth. The host wants to defeat someone of a higher level with a 4th grade cultivation. It's really wishful thinking. Wishful thinking. Jun Changshao laughed. Whoosh whoosh! In an instant, an incomparably cold sword aura spread out from his body and instantly rushed in all directions. Gu Tuhong said indifferently, do you want to use the power of the Sword King? Old man. Jun Changshao, who was in the middle of the sword aura, said proudly, I have a sword move that can cut the stars above and break the rivers below. Do you dare to take it? Why wouldn't I dare? Gu Tuhong sneered. Jun Changshao put his hands behind his back. His clothes fluttered in the cold and fierce wind, and the sword aura that spread out became stronger. At that moment, many martial artists felt that this guy seemed to be getting sharper and sharper, as if he had become a sharp sword that was about to be unsheathed. Buzz! 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 Under the sword aura, the swords of many martial artists trembled. When they wanted to use their hands to stop it, they heard a clang and their swords directly flew out. Clang! Clang! The sound of sword aura being unsheathed rang out one after another. Gu Tuhong was stunned and subconsciously looked back. He saw a dense number of sharp swords, forming a sword rain, flying over his head. This! He widened his eyes. Clang! Clang! The swords of the disciples of the sect of all times flew over from another direction. For a moment, in the sky behind Jun Changshao, thousands of sharp swords were suspended, revealing an incomparably sharp aura. Why did my sword fly out? I can't control it at all. Jun Patriarch once used this sword move in the Imperial City. The cultivator from the Imperial City of Heavenly Mandate recalled the scene of Jun Changshao and O Yangli fighting. Looking at the thousands of swords suspended in the air, a dignified look appeared in his eyes, and he said in a low voice, Jun Patriarch, what sword move is this? 10,000 swords in one. Whoosh! 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 Thousands of swords flashed and instantly gathered together, forming a giant sword like a mountain peak, slashing down at Gu Tuhong. Whoosh! The giant sword fell, and the sword aura exploded. Gu Tuhong's expression changed greatly because there was a sword aura that was like Wu Huang's domain that instantly bound him. At this moment, all he could do was brace himself and take the blow. Chapter 579. Thousands of sharp swords converged, like a tall and straight mountain peak piercing the clouds, revealing the supreme sword power. Everyone present held their breath, and their eyes were filled with horror. At that moment, that scene, it would be imprinted in their hearts forever, and they would never forget it. Whoosh! The giant sword slashed down, and the sword power erupted. Wu Huang level Gu Tuhong was bound by the sword momentum, and it was difficult for him to dodge. He could only take it head-on. Ah! He roared angrily and stimulated all his cultivation. The void in front of him instantly rippled, and lines of solid enchantments condensed and formed. Full defense. Just to meet the 10,000 swords in one. To be able to force Wu Huang to this point, even if Jun Changshao could not defeat his opponent, it was enough to prove himself. Whoosh! The sword momentum rippled, and the world lost its color. Under everyone's shocked gaze, the giant sword slammed down and collided with the first enchantment condensed by Gu Tuhong. Bang! Broken. Bang! The second enchantment was broken. Bang! 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 In an instant, the following 3 defensive enchantments were also broken. The power of the giant sword was irresistible. Puff! Gu Tuhong spat out blood. At this moment, there was only one enchantment left in front of him, but under the sword momentum, it was like a candle in the wind, and it could be extinguished at any time. Not allowed. Not allowed. Gu Tuhong's eyes widened, and he suddenly raised his palms. Whoosh! The last psionic energy in his dantian was stimulated to strengthen the enchantment, just to defend the dignity of Wu Huang. Boom! The giant sword slammed down like a mountain. Whoosh! The violent sword intent madly wreaked havoc around, as if it had turned into an invisible sickle, sweeping through the empty grassland. The weeds within a radius of 10,000 feet were harvested close to the ground, and the stones were flattened. The big trees showed sword marks, and then were cut in half. The martial artists watching the battle were far enough away. Otherwise, they would have been directly strangled by the sword intent. My God! This is too terrible. Everyone was terrified and subconsciously stepped back a lot. Another Wu Huang from the West Cloud State had a solemn expression. He could not imagine that the patriarch of the sect of all times would have such a powerful sword move. If he were to take it head-on, he would definitely be in a very difficult situation. Crack! The sound of something collapsing suddenly rang out in the quiet environment. Although everyone did not see it immediately, they could also guess that the last enchantment that Gu Tuhong condensed must have been broken. Whoosh! 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 Right at this moment, streaks of sharp swords flew up and hovered above Jun Changshao again, flashing with dazzling light. Opposite. Gu Tuhong stood in place. Although he was still standing, his hands were hanging by his sides. His face was abnormally pale, and he looked like he was about to collapse. Taking the 10,000 swords returned to one head-on only caused him to suffer minor injuries, but the energy in his body had been depleted by 80 to 99%. The corner of Jun Changxiao's mouth rose as he smiled. You've lost. Gu Tuhong exhaled and clasped his hands together with difficulty. Thank you, Jun Patriarch, for showing mercy. After the last defensive enchantment that he condensed was broken, the power of the sword was still very strong, and it could have gone with the flow. However, the moment it fell, it suddenly disintegrated, then turned into a stream of light and flew back. How could Gu Tuhong not know that this was done deliberately by the other party? Otherwise, if he took that sword head-on in his exhausted state, he would definitely have died or been injured. Jun Changshao said, "It's just a spar, not a battle of life and death." System, after this guy used the 10,000 swords returned to one, the spiritual energy in the 2 spirit cores was almost depleted. He did not make the final cut, but deliberately made it look like he was pulling back. Unexpectedly. That guy really believed it. Young Masterling, Jun Changshao said, "You can let the other Wu Huang continue to fight. I will accompany you to the end." He wanted to fight Wu Huang again. Awesome. The warriors of southwest Yangzhou all looked at him with admiration and respect. In his own territory, he had beaten Wu Huang of West Yunzhou until he was convinced. How proud he was. Elder Lu. Ling Yufang said, "Let's fight." The Wu Huang, called Lu Shangqing's mouth twitched slightly. The patriarch of the sect of all times looked as if nothing had happened. Those thousands of swords were still hanging in the air. If he made another move, he would definitely not be able to take it. Young city lord. Lu Shangqing said, "Jun Patriarch is still a king level. If this old man fights with him again, I will be ridiculed by the people of Jianghu." The power of the 10,000 swords returned to one shocked this Wu Huang, and he did not have the courage to fight. Of course. Lu Shangqing was not thinking about the 2 Wu Huangs fighting a king level and being ridiculed by others. He was thinking about the 2 Wu Huangs not being able to defeat a king level and being ridiculed by others. People who had reached a certain level and age would definitely care about their reputation. And this. It also gave Jun Changshao a way out. He said, "If that's the case, then continue to challenge the disciples of the sect of all times." Xiao. Xiao. The sword aura that filled the air dissipated, and the thousands of swords in the air all flew back to their respective owners. Damn it! Ling Yufang was extremely angry. He originally thought that coming to southwest Yangzhou under his father's orders would be a very simple matter. He did not expect the sect of all times to be so troublesome that even Wu Huang could not do anything about it. Patriarch Su Xiaoma volunteered. This disciple would like to fight with young Master Ling from the Imperial City. He did not like Ling Yufang for a long time. Jun Changshao said, "You'll have to ask if young Master Ling is interested." Young Master Ling, Su Xiaoma smiled, "Can you come up to the stage and fight with me?" Before Ling Yufang could say anything, he said again, "If you're not willing, I won't force you. After all, the people I sent have already lost so many battles, you won't make a difference." These words were a bit mischievous. The arrogant Ling Yufang's eyes were instantly filled with anger. "Senior brother Su." Li Fei smiled, "You can't underestimate young Master Ling. If he didn't have the ability, how could he become the young master of the Imperial City?" "That's hard to say." Su Xiaoma said, "Some people are born into a good family and have a good father. Even if they don't have the ability, they can still do well." Kacha Ling Yufang clenched his fists tightly, his anger erupting. What he could not stand the most was others thinking that he relied on his father. The truth? It really was the truth. Jun Changshao clasped his hands, "These two disciples of mine are talking nonsense. Young Master Ling, please don't lower yourself to their level. Besides, what's wrong with relying on your father? Other people can't even rely on you." Everyone's mouth twitched. "Jun Patriarch, you're purposely provoking young Master Ling. Hurry up and apologize to young Master Ling," Jun Changshao said in a low voice. Su Xiaoma and Li Fei clasped their hands, "Young Master Ling, we were wrong. You have a good father. You're amazing." The two of them echoed each other, making Ling Yufang's nose crooked. In the end, he could not control his emotions and shouted, "Fine, I'll fight the disciples of the sect of all times." He could not take it anymore. He had to fight. He had to let others know that he relied on himself, not his father. "Young master." Lu Shangqing wanted to persuade him, but Ling Yufang said in a low voice, "I've made up my mind." Chapter 580. I have made up my mind. These 4 words were said very decisively, indicating that Ling Yufang was really angry. He had to use his strength to prove that he didn't rely on his father. Lu Shang was on the verge of collapse. The other party was obviously provoking him on purpose, yet he was still foolishly looking for trouble. The city lord was so wise and powerful, how did he give birth to such a bastard? Of course. He only dared to think about it in his heart and didn't dare to say it out loud. "All right." Jun Chang smiled and said, "Little Mu, why don't you fight with young Master Ling?" "Yes." Su Xiaoma jumped into the ring. Before he even started warming up, the disciples of the sect of all time started to send messages to him. "Senior brother Su, you have to beat this guy up. That arrogance of Gang Chang really pisses me off. I have to torture him until he's half dead. It's best to beat him until he pisses all over." The reason why everyone hated him so much was because Ling Yufang deliberately called the sect of all times an ancient sect. It had to be said. In terms of attracting hatred, this guy was comparable to Jun Changshao. Shua! Ling Yufang landed on the ring, his eyes flashing with anger. If his eyes could kill, Su Xiaoma would have been cut into pieces. The one on the ring is an inner disciple of the sect of all times, his strength is definitely not bad. Can young Master Ling win? I heard that this young city lord Ling's talent isn't too high, his father used a lot of natural treasures to help him shape his meridians. Sigh, this is a good life, this is a good reincarnation. Ling Yufang heard the whispers of the southwest Yangzhou martial artists, the anger in his body was even stronger. Why did they only care about his father? No one cared about his hard work all these years. Could it be because of his birth? All his hard work and effort were erased, and blamed on having a good father. This This is unfair to me. Hu. Under the burning anger, Ling Yufang released Wuzong's cultivation, and said in a low voice, I want to let you know that I can become the young city lord, to have my current cultivation, it's all because of myself. How? Su Xiaoma smiled. Ling Yufang, who had unleashed his full cultivation, said proudly, let's compete with weapons. Shua! As he spoke, he gently raised his right hand, and a sword with a dragon beast engraved on it appeared. Although it hadn't been unsheathed, it exuded a sharp aura. 3-foot swimming dragon sword. Oh my god, this is one of City Lord Ling's personal swords. Its quality has already reached the high level of the highest level. I never thought that he would give it to his son. Everyone looked at him enviously. Lu Shangqing and Gu Tuhong's eyes flashed with a strange light. As Wu Huang, they didn't have such a weapon that was close to the saint level. True enough. It was awesome to have a good father. It was quite ironic that Ling Yufang, who wanted to prove himself, took out the sword that his father had given him. Come. Su Xiaoma said, let's begin. Where's your weapon? To deal with a rookie like you, my bare hands are enough. Arrogant. Ling Yufang's eyes turned cold. He immediately grabbed the hilt of the sword. With a clang, the 3-foot swimming dragon sword was unsheathed. This sword was 3 feet long, and the blade was white. When it was unsheathed, there seemed to be a dragon's roar. It was indeed a very good weapon. Even the strong ones might not be able to buy it even if they had the money. Shua! Ling Yufang poured his psionic energy into the sword and suddenly slashed it in the void. Instantly, it dragged a cold and sharp sword aura. Su Xiaoma tiptoed and used a mysterious footwork to bypass it. Then, he appeared behind Ling Yufang and directly threw a kick. Bang! Ling Yufang didn't have time to dodge at all. He was directly kicked on the shoulder and quickly retreated with the sword in his hand. Shua! Su Xiaoma strode forward and poured his psionic energy into his right foot. Suddenly, he launched a dazzling bombardment. Bang! 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 In an instant, Ling Yufang suffered a heavy blow to his chest and staggered back to the edge of the arena. He was only a 4th-grade Wuzong. Even if he had a high-grade sword, in front of Su Xiaoma who was at the peak of Wuzong, he would be completely destroyed. Damn it! Ling Yufang endured the pain and angrily displayed his sword art. Suddenly, a dense sword shadow appeared in front of him. This was also a profound sword art that the city lord prepared for his son. Unfortunately, Ling Yufang's talent wasn't outstanding. Even if he learned the sword art, even if he had a high-grade sword, it would still be difficult for him to display its true power. Shua! Shua! Su Xiaoma used his full speed to dodge left and right on the arena, avoiding the cold sword aura. Then, he went in front of Ling Yufang and kicked his wrist. Xiao! The 3-foot swimming dragon sword flew out of his hand and was inserted into the ground. Lu Shangqing shook his head. This result, he wasn't surprised at all. To put it bluntly, because young city lord Ling had a powerful father, everyone respected him. Without this layer of relationship, he wouldn't have any sense of presence in the crowd. Damn it! Ling Yufang was furious. He had such a powerful sword and sword art, why couldn't he defeat a disciple of the sect of all times? This question was very simple. He had a good father. Su Xiaoma and the rest had a good patriarch. You have countless resources and rich martial arts. Sorry, these sect of all times disciples had all of that. If they wanted to find an advantage, Ling Yufang's identity as the young city lord could be used to show off. Of course. If they had to choose between being a young city lord and being a sect of all times disciple, Su Xiaoma and the rest would definitely choose the latter. Because in their hearts, a sect of all times disciple was a priceless treasure. Was it over? No. After Su Xiaoma kicked away Ling Yufang's weapon, he didn't give him a chance to surrender or jump off the stage. He gave him a heavy punch that made him dizzy. Then, he started to destroy him. Bang! 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 The spectators' mouths twitched. In the end, they couldn't bear to watch and turned their heads away. June Patriarch. Princess Red Lotus whispered, after all, he is the young city lord of soaring royal city. Just teach him a lesson. Don't go overboard. June Changshao said, it is because he is the young city lord that we have to be ruthless. This way, the world will know that the sect of all times is not to be trifled with. Princess Red Lotus was silent. Boom! Another heavy punch landed. Ling Yufang, who had been beaten up, tilted his head and fainted. His entire face was swollen. Even his parents might not be able to recognize him. Pa! Su Xiaoma clapped his hands and said, thank you for letting me win. Lu Shangqing and Gu Tuhong's expressions were ugly. However, they didn't say anything. After all, this was an arena battle. Since they had gone up, they could only blame themselves for being beaten up. Both of you. June Changshao said, if you still want to learn martial arts, you can continue to go up the stage. The sect of all times will not reject anyone. The experts of the 5 fourth-rate sects were silent. Even Wu Huang was defeated. The sect of all times was too strong. If they continued to go up the stage, they would only embarrass themselves. June Patriarch. Lu Shangqing cupped his hands and said, as expected of the top 3 sections. Today, we have learned a lot. We will not disturb you any further. We will take our leave first. After losing so many battles, Wu Huang didn't even win. What face did he have left? Therefore, it was best to leave. Forgive me for not sending you off. June Changshao cupped his hands and said. Lu Shangqing ordered his disciples to carry the unconscious Ling Yufang. Under the gaze of the martial practitioners of southwest Yangzhou, they left dejectedly. When they came, they were very arrogant. When they left, they were very embarrassed. Today, the 5 fourth-rate sects of the West Cloud State returned in defeat at the sect of all times. Today, a martial practitioner of southwest Yangzhou shouted from the bottom of his heart, June Patriarch is mighty. The sect of all times is mighty. June Patriarch is mighty. The sect of all times is mighty. Everyone shouted in unison. Their voices echoed in the sky. The words unyielding iron bones were written on the plaque hanging above the main hall. Under the sunlight, it shone with a dazzling light. June Patriarch. Princess Red Lotus smiled and said, if my father knew about this, he would be very happy. June Changshao didn't hear what she said. He also didn't hear the shouts of the crowd. This was because his ears were covered by the sound of the mission completion notification. Chapter 581. Ding! Side quest completed, obtained 5,000 contribution points. Ding! Contribution points, 1500020000. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side quest and triggering the hidden reward. Obtained Experience Talisman X3, obtained Holy Rank Aptitude Transformation Liquid X1. June Changshao was overjoyed. This side quest actually gave him 3 Experience Talisman. However, at this moment, another notification sounded in his ears, congratulations to the host for triggering the hidden goods, obtaining the Sword Path Aptitude Liquid, Array Formation Aptitude Liquid, and the right to purchase the Martial King Pill Formula. June Changshao was stunned. In the next second, he was so excited that he almost flew away. The right to purchase the Sword Path Formation Aptitude Liquid, this was definitely not going to be great. Also, the Martial King Pill Formula. He couldn't take it anymore. June Patriarch was so excited that his little heart almost stopped beating. Shwa! He hurriedly opened the shopping list, and sure enough, he saw 2 types of Aptitude Liquid and Martial King Pill Formula appear out of thin air. Ahahaha, June Changshao squatted on the ground, covering his face as he laughed wantonly. He had the style of Tang Bohu's Star Master in Autumn Fragrance. Princess Red Lotus said, June Patriarch, what's wrong with you? Princess. Li Qingyang said seriously, Patriarch sometimes can't help but laugh. Jun Changshao suddenly laughed out loud for no reason. As a disciple, he had seen many times and was already used to it. Oh. Princess Red Lotus replied, and thought to herself, is this an illness? If it was an illness, Jun Changshao would rather be terminally ill and incurable. 10 years ago, City Lord Mu brought experts to the West Cloud State, but in the end, he was shaved bald. He was so angry that he vomited blood on the spot, and it took him a long time to recover. That was a shameful battle. For a long time, City Lord Mu and the Southwest Yangzhou martial cultivators could not raise their heads. Every time they thought about it, they would feel extremely pained. Until today. At the foot of Iron Bone Mountain, Jun Changshao and his disciples had shaved the heads of the 5 great sects of the West Cloud province. They had even defeated a martial emperor and brutally abused the Lingting royal city's young city lord. For a moment, many martial artists rushed to spread the news, as if the whole world was celebrating. All right. In the Long family of Longyang City, Long Padian slammed the table and stood up after hearing about this matter. He laughed loudly and said, Jun Patriarch has avenged our Southwest Yangzhou. Teacher Jun is too amazing. I really want to graduate quickly and join the sect of all times. The students of the Heavenly Mandate Academy were also in a heated discussion. Their admiration for Jun Changshao grew even stronger. Ha ha ha. Yi Tianxing laughed and said, awesome, awesome. Although he was a certified dojo master and had to remain neutral, he had always lived in southwest Yangzhou. Now that the sects of the inner prefecture had beaten up the sects of the outer prefecture, they would definitely be delighted. Furthermore, in the past, it was always the sects from their own province that were bullied by others. This time, it was the other way around. They were bullied by outsiders right in front of their own home. This was definitely refreshing. I've decided. Yi Tianxing said, for the next Dragon Tiger battle, the sect of all times will represent Southwest Yangzhou. This, Elder Zhou, Elder Zhen, and the others were stunned. They did not expect that the dojo master, who had been hesitating all this time, would suddenly make a decision. Elder Zhou, Yi Tianxing said, make a trip to the sect of all times and inform them personally. Let Jun Patriarch prepare actively for this in the next 2 years. Yes. Elder Zhou hurriedly left. Yi Tianxing put one hand on the table and murmured, Jun Patriarch, I hope that you can represent the certification dojo and Southwest Yangzhou and achieve good results in the Dragon Tiger battle 2 years later. The discussion about the sect of all times in the outside world was getting more and more intense. As the person involved, Jun Changshao locked himself in his room and took out 3 experience talismans. Smack! Whoosh whoosh, the psionic power in the 2 spiritual nuclei instantly boiled. A moment later, the aura emanating from Jun Changshao's body was even more intense. His realm had also advanced from level 4 to level 5. It took a lot of time and contribution points to break through to level 4. Now that he had advanced with just 1 experience talisman, it was simply too awesome. Smack! Smack! Jun Changshao crushed the other 2 experience talismans. His realm had advanced from level 5 to level 7. I'm Jun Changshao. Walking out of the room, he exhaled and said, I didn't cheat. The system said, a decent person. Bang! Arriving at the training room, Jun Changshao punched the testing machine. The strength displayed was 11.5 million gene. It had broken through 10 million. Smack! Jun Changshao covered his face and laughed again. He had only been at level 2 meridian opening when he transmigrated. Now, he had advanced to level 7 King of Sword and Martial Arts with an explosive strength of 11.5 million gene. This was his growth. This was his change. He asked loudly who else. Jun Patriarch was floating. He was floating so much that his feet left the ground. The floating virus had been turned off. However, Although the contribution points given for a side mission were not much, the rewards were too generous. The system said, this is because of the 2.0 version of the system. Some elite side missions are not inferior to the previous epic missions. Jun Changshao said, in that case, after entering the peak of the Sword Martial King and triggering the epic mission, the rewards will be even more generous? That's right. The system paused for a moment and added, similarly, the difficulty will also increase. Oh. Jun Changshao replied and opened the shopping list. He clicked on the beginner-grade sword path aptitude liquid. He glanced through the description and directly placed it under price, 5,000 contribution points. Damn! A beginner grade is so expensive. He hurriedly clicked on the beginner-grade formation aptitude liquid. In the end, the price was also 5,000 contribution points. Jun Patriarch was speechless. Now that he had 15,000 contribution points, he felt that he was filthy rich. If he were to buy this kind of aptitude liquid, he could only buy 3 bottles at most. This is too much. Jun Changshao clicked on the Martial King pill formula. It introduced that after refining this pill and consuming it, a martial artist could directly break through to Martial King from the peak of Wuzong. Awesome! Were there any side effects? Of course. The side effects were clearly written. Martial King was already an extremely high level in the mortal continent. In order to maintain the balance of the heavens and earth, a martial artist would lose 100 years of their lifespan after consuming it. Jun Changshao said, this is using one's lifespan to break through. The price of the Martial King pill formula was quite reasonable, only 2,000 contribution points. However, considering that it would cost 100 years of his lifespan, Jun Patriarch did not immediately decide whether to buy it or not. Instead, he began to investigate. Qing Yang, if you were given a chance to break through to Martial King, would you be willing to give up 100 years of your lifespan? I'm willing. Zueji, what about you? Patriarch, of course I'm willing. Why? After breaking through to the next level, one's lifespan will increase by a lot. Losing 100 years of lifespan is nothing. That's right. Jun Changshao slapped his forehead and said in realization, when a martial artist breaks through to the next level, their lifespan will increase as well. What's there to worry about losing 100 years of lifespan? Living beings in the falling star continent had a long lifespan to begin with. Sacrificing 100 years in exchange for becoming a martial king was not excessive at all. The system broke down, so what's the use of the Martial King pill's side effects? Chapter 582. After consuming 100 years and breaking through to the Martial King realm, his lifespan would increase again. There was no change at all with this reduction and replenishment. Buy! Jun Changshao spent 2,000 contribution points to buy the Wu King pill formula, which was automatically matched to the pill pavilion. Just as he was about to check what medicinal herbs he needed, Su Xiaomo reported, Patriarch, Elder Zhou from the certification headquarters is here to see you. Jun Changshao said, please. Elder Zhou entered the main hall and first said some pleasantries, then told him the purpose of his visit. Dragon Tiger Hegemony. Jun Changshao had never heard of it before. The system said, this is the highest standard sect competition in the Falling Star continent. Oh. Jun Changshao shook his head, and said, Elder Zhou, I only want to peacefully develop the sect, I have no interest in this kind of competition. He was not interested. If there was a mission, he would be more active than anyone else. Jun Patriarch. Elder Zhou said, the sect of all times can represent the southwest Yangzhou to participate in the Dragon Tiger Hegemony competition that is held once every 5 years. That is definitely a supreme honor. Does Elder Zhou think that my sect is lacking in glory right now? No, it was very sufficient. At this time, the sect of all times in the southwest Yangzhou was definitely who didn't know you. Not to mention, when the news of defeating the 5 sects of the West Cloud State spread out, it would definitely cause a heated discussion in the other provinces. Sigh. Elder Zhou sighed, and said, since that's the case, I can only bring the 50,000 spirit stones back to the head. Wait. Jun Changshao leaned forward and narrowed his eyes. 50,000 spirit stones? Elder Zhou said, the head will use his own money to give the sect of all times 50,000 spirit stones for the development of the sect, so that we can deal with the Dragon Tiger hegemony competition in 2 years. Since Jun Patriarch is not participating, I can only bring it back. Pa! Jun Changshao slammed the table, and said, it is an honor for my sect of all times to represent the Southwest Yangzhou. Elder Zhou, please go back and tell the head that Jun is willing to lead the disciples to participate in the Dragon Tiger hegemony competition. Elder Zhou was stunned. At that moment, he felt as though there was a light flickering behind Jun Patriarch's head, as though he was a sage who was delivering salvation to all living beings. Bah! The system's disdainful voice echoed in his ears for a long time. Jun Changshao had no reason to reject the sect of all times' participation in the Dragon Arc Hegemony tournament since the certification center valued it so much. It had nothing to do with spirit stones. It was related to the fact that he was from the southwestern Yangzhou. After sending Elder Zhou off, Jun Changshao inspected the space ring that contained the spirit stones and felt very pleased. Patriarch. Jiangye asked, are you really going to participate in the Dragon Tiger battle for hegemony? Okay, Jun Changshao replied. Jiangye said solemnly, this is the Grand Sect tournament of the highest scale in the Starfall continent. Countless sects will participate. It is said that there will even be disciples from first-rate sects participating. Really? Jun Changshao's interest was immediately piqued. If not for the spirit stones, he really did not plan to participate. However, since first-rate sects were participating, it would definitely be a grand event. If that was the case, how could the sect of all times be absent? The Dragon Tiger Battle for Hegemony was the Grand Sect tournament of the highest scale in the Starfall continent. It was held once every 5 years, and there were still 2 years before the next one. Southwestern Yangzhou would send a sect to participate every year. However, because their strength could not compare to the other states, they only had one spot. They would be eliminated in the first round in all the previous years. So? Jun Changshao asked. Jiangye said, actually, the sects that Southwestern Yangzhou sent out every year are quite strong. Just last year, they sent the only third-rate sect. In the end, they were defeated in the first round by a fourth-rate sect. It can't be. Jun Changshao said in surprise, a third-rate sect can't beat a fourth-rate sect? Jiangye said, in theory, a third-rate sect is stronger than a fourth-rate sect. However, the sect that represented southwestern Yangzhou was unlucky and encountered a fourth-rate sect from the Zhongzuan state. In the end, they were defeated miserably. Jun Changshao was silent. So it was a fourth-rate sect from the Zhongzuan state. That was understandable. Although the forces in the Starfall continent were divided into levels, what really determined how strong they were was still geographical factors. The heaven and earth attributes were extremely strong, and there were outstanding talents in the big states. The sects born in the big states would definitely be stronger than the sects in the remote areas. As the center of the continent, the Zhongzuan state was definitely full of experts and rich in resources. Not to mention a fourth-rate sect defeating a third-rate sect from another state, even a sixth-rate sect could defeat a fifth-rate sect. So, the sect's level was only a standard. Whether it was strong or not depended on where it came from. For example, the 5 fourth-rate sects from the West Cloud state that came to challenge the sect of all times would definitely be stronger than the fourth-rate sect from southwestern Yangzhou. That was exactly the case. When Jun Changshao and his disciples defeated them and shaved their heads, the martial artists in the state would be extremely excited. The value of this was very high. It seems like Jun Changshao touched his nose and said, it's a little difficult to win the championship of the Dragon Tiger Battle for Hegemony. It's more than difficult. Jiangye said seriously, with the current strength of the sect of all times, it's definitely as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It's okay. It's okay. Jun Changshao said, there are still 2 years to make the sect stronger. When the time comes to participate in this kind of grand sect competition, we must get first place. Jiang Ye was dumbfounded. The Ning brothers were also dumbfounded. Getting first place in the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony, this goal was not ordinary. On the martial arts practice field, 10,000 disciples stood in an orderly manner, their aura like a rainbow. Jun Changshao stood at the entrance of the main hall and said, 2 years later, do you have the confidence to win the championship of the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony? Yes. All the disciples shouted in unison. Okay. Jun Changshao said, dismissed, cultivate. Swoosh. Sitting in the study, he pulled out the panel of the elixir pavilion and clicked on the martial emperor pill. The required herbs immediately appeared. Good heavens! There were more than 50 of them. And from the names of the herbs, they were all very expensive. Jun Changshao said, as expected, it's not easy to let a disciple break through to Martial King. He wrote down the herbs on a piece of paper and handed it to the procurement hall to purchase. Patriarch Su Xiaoma walked in. Jun Changshao placed the reward of the mission on the table and said, take this and improve your spiritual root. Su Xiaoma was happy and said, thank you, Patriarch. As he spoke, he opened the bottle and swallowed it. His spiritual root advanced from supreme to sacred. In this way, there were already 4 disciples of the Eternal Sect who had upgraded their spiritual roots to the level of divine grade. A few days later, the people from the procurement hall returned one after another, but they did not manage to buy any of the herbs needed to refine the martial emperor pill. However, he bought a batch of seeds from the AI family. Elder Wei. Jun Changshao said, how long will it take to grow them? Elder Wei pondered for a moment and said, the seeds provided by the patriarch are all very rare. I'm afraid it will take at least half a year for them to mature. Half a year? Although it was a bit long, Jun Changshao said, then I'll have to trouble Elder Wei. Patriarch. At this moment, Li Luoqiu came in to report, our spies have spread to the Lu prefecture in the northeast, and we have some bad news. Speak. Jun Changshao said. Li Luoqiu hesitated for a moment and said, Lu Qianqian is wanted by the extreme coldness palace in the Lu prefecture in the northeast. She even fought with the other party's experts in the boundless ice sea. Whoosh within the main hall, a violent sword martial aura surged out and instantly filled the entire sect. Many disciples were shocked. What's going on? Su Xiaoma and the others were confused. Li Qingyang frowned and said, the patriarch is angry. Shuiren Gui. Jun Changshao's angry voice sounded in the sect, gather 1,000 soldiers and follow me to the Lu prefecture in the northeast. Yes. Whoosh. 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 In an instant, the cultivating members of the Wolf Rider Hall were fully armed. Chapter 583. The members of the Wolf Rider Hall, who were still cultivating, instantly entered a state of combat readiness. Perhaps they were affected by the Patriarch's aura, riding on the Hurricane Wolf, their faces were filled with a strong murderous aura. Long Xiang, Yang Yuhua, and the others used the cloud-traversing steps to rush over and landed neatly on the martial arts practice field. Including Yi Xingqian, the 20 inner disciples of the sect of all times were all in position. Senior brother. Su Xiaoma whispered, what's going on? Li Qingyang said, senior sister is being bullied in Luzhou in the northeast. What? Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others were instantly furious. How dare they bully our senior sister? They must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. Screech, the cry of an eagle came from Mount Ironbone. The Demon Ridge Black Eagle, which was as big as a mountain, spread its wings and rose. It was defined as the sect of all times' guardian spirit beast. It would not appear unless the sect was in danger. Pucci. Pucci. The Demon Ridge Black Eagle hovered above the martial arts practice field. Whoosh! Jun Changshao walked out of the hall angrily, then flew up and landed on the head of the contract beast. He said in a deep voice, let's go. Awuawa the disciples rode on the hurricane wolf and turned into streams of light, galloping along the mountain path. Screech! The demon ridge black eagle flew into the endless sky. This time, June Patriarch not only brought 1,000 wolf riders, but also the Ning brothers and all the inner disciples to Lu Zhou in the northeast. The formation could be said to be quite large. Jiang Yi did not go. He was in charge of managing the sect. Hall Master Li and some of the members of the Drizzle Hall also followed. Their goal was to gather information faster and find out Lu Qianqian's location. On this day, the elites of the sect of all times were all out. Dragons had reverse scales, and those who touched them would die. Every disciple of the sect of all times was Jun Changxiao's reverse scale. Therefore, whoever dared to bully them would have to pay a painful price. Moreover, and it was Lu Qianqian, her eldest disciple. It could be imagined that when Jun Changxiao brought his disciples to Lu province in the northeast, it would definitely set off a bloody storm. Dean! In the Heavenly Mandate Academy, the vice-headmaster hurriedly came to see him and said, "I've just received news that Jun Changxiao has left Qingyang County with a large group of disciples." "Oh?" Situ Haoyan asked, "Where did he go?" The vice-president said, "Judging from the route, it seems to be heading to Lu Zhou in the northeast." Lu Zhou in the northeast? Situ Haoyan frowned and asked, "Why are we going there?" Dean! Princess Red Lotus hurried over and said with a frown, "I just received news that the eldest disciple of the sect of all times, Lu Qianqian, is wanted by the extreme cold palace in the northeastern Lu prefecture." The vice principal said, "Could it be that the kid brought people to Lu province in the northeast because of this?" Situ Haoyan frowned and said, "I'm afraid that's not good." What? In the certification headquarters, Yi Tianqing, who had received the news, stood up and said in shock, "Jun Patriarch brought people to Lu province in the northeast with a murderous aura." Yes. Elder Zhen said, "It seems that the disciples of the sect have been bullied." Yi Tianqing frowned. He knew that Jun Changxiao was very protective of his disciples. Back when the evil sects of Huayang County bullied his disciples, he directly killed 4 of them. This time, it was normal for him to bring people over when his disciples were being bullied in Lu province in the northeast. That's Lu province in the northeast. Yi Tianqing broke down and said, if he rashly brought his disciples over, it might affect the forces of the entire province. No, no. He hurriedly ordered, "The 4 of you go quickly. Don't let anything happen to Jun Patriarch." Yes. On this day, the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the certification headquarters left the Heavenly Mandate Imperial City and headed to Lu province in the northeast. Did you hear? Yesterday, someone saw a large group of disciples of the sect of all times galloping on wolf beasts in the wilderness. It looked like they were going to war. The warriors of Yangzhou in the southwest were discussing. The sect of all times had become famous recently. Their every move would be infinitely exaggerated. The demon clan and the branch of the murdering shrine had also received the news. They knew that the sect of all times was going to Lu province in the northeast to seek justice for their disciples. Humph. The branch leader sneered and said, "That guy thinks that he can do whatever he wants in the Falling Star continent with the protection of the 2 major organizations?" Although Lu province in the northeast is a land of ice and snow, the ice element is extremely strong. The extreme cold palace was built entirely by ice element martial arts cultivators. Although it is only a 4th-rate sect, it might not be weaker than a 3rd-rate sect. One of his subordinates said, if the sect of all times were to go there unscrupulously, they would definitely be beaten black and blue. That's why. The branch leader smiled and said, he is still too young. He gets carried away every time he encounters something. In the end, he will be the one who gets hurt. However, being taught a lesson by a sect from another province can also extinguish that guy's arrogance and let him understand that there is always someone better than him. The sect of all times was related to the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the Certification Academy. The 2 branches of the evil sects could not afford to offend them. They had always been invisible, but they would definitely hide in the dark and enjoy watching the other party embarrass themselves. Their happy times were running out. In June Patriarch's little notebook, there were still debts owed by the two evil sections. When he had time, he would definitely settle the debts with interest. Whoosh whoosh, the north wind whistled, and it was freezing cold. In an ice field, there was only one inn in a radius of 100 miles. At this moment, warriors were drinking hot wine and discussing recent events. Creak. The door was pushed open, and a white-clothed man walked in amidst the fluttering snow. Then, he sat by the window. "Sir, do you want a meal or a room?" "A meal." "What would you like to eat?" "Anything." The waiter did not ask any more questions. Soon, a few dishes and a pot of wine were served. The warriors in the inn only glanced at him and continued their discussion. Their conversation never left the mysterious woman in white. "Brother How?" Someone was puzzled and said, "The recent events have been widely spread in Luzhou." "What is going on?" The middle-aged man called Brother How said, "If this matter is investigated further, the place where the conflict occurred is here." "Here?" Many warriors were confused. Brother How took a sip of wine and said, "The woman in white first appeared at the inn, and then she sat, yes, she sat right where this young friend is sitting. She chopped off the palm of a martial cultivator and incurred the wrath of the Snow Track Valley. Then, she was hunted down by them, and in the end, the extreme cold palace was involved." Snow Track Valley. The man in white sitting by the window asked, "Where is it?" Brother How smiled and said, "Young friend, you look a little unfamiliar. You don't seem to be from the ice field." The man in white turned his head and said, "Snow Track Valley, where is it?" His voice and eyes were very cold. Everyone felt their scalp go numb and their feet shivered when they saw it. The smile on Brother How's face froze. His voice trembled as he said, Go east along the ice field. It's about 500 miles. The man in white retracted his cold gaze and took a sip of hot wine. He threw down a tael of silver and got up to leave. "Brother How?" A warrior whispered, "This guy is a little strange. He can make me feel fear just by looking at him. He must be an expert." Brother How said with a serious face. "Awo! Awo!" Suddenly, there were wolf howls outside. Brother How and the others hurried to the window and saw a group of warriors riding wolf beasts galloping toward the east. Chapter 584. 500 miles to the east of the ice field, there was a valley surrounded by icebergs on three sides. Inside, there were rows upon rows of buildings. Snow Track Valley. A seventh-rate sect in Lu State in the northeast. Although the level of this sect was not high, they had one major characteristic, which was the taming of snowfield wolves. Seeing people riding snowfield wolves on the road, they were most likely people from Snow Track Valley. At this moment, many wolf beasts were gathered in this sect's martial arts field. However, they were not snowfield wolves, but the more ferocious and powerful hurricane wolves. They spat out wind vortexes and were very arrogant. Those tamed snowfield wolves were now like little lambs huddled together, shivering in fear. Bang! The bullet flew out and shattered the plaque with the words Snow Track Valley engraved on it. Jun Changshao sat on a chair, twirling the desert eagle with his fingers, and said lightly, "From today onwards, Snow Track Valley will be removed from the martial arts world." This sentence could be said to be domineering. Plop! The valley master of Snow Track Valley knelt on the ground, his eyes wide open and completely dead. Before he died, he knew that the other party was the patriarch of the sect of all times in Yangzhou in the southwest. He also knew that the reason why the sect was destroyed was because they had offended the woman in white. Plop! A few elders of Snow Track Valley fell into a pool of blood. From their vision, they could see the disciples of Snow Track Valley lying on the ground in disorder. Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, and the other disciples held the cold light sword in their hands, which was already stained with blood. Their faces were expressionless, as if they were emotionless killers. Whoosh whoosh, monstrous flames burned in the valley, adding a bit of glamour to the snow-white world. No one would have thought that on such a peaceful day, Snow Track Valley, which had been established for nearly 100 years, would be suddenly destroyed. Patriarch Li Luoqiu walked over quickly and said, "I just received news that Lu Qianqian." Subconsciously, she shut her mouth. She knew that if she told him the latest information, it would only anger this man even more. "Speak," Jun Changshao said. Li Luoqiu was silent for a moment and said, "She might have been caught by the Extreme Cold Palace." Extreme Cold Palace's location is confirmed? Yes. Let's go. Shwa. Shwa. The members of the Wolf Rider Hall rode their hurricane wolves and charged towards the Extreme Cold Palace. Why is the Snow Trail Valley on fire? After Jun Changshao left with his disciples, some of the bolder martial artists entered the valley one after another. When they saw the burnt corpses on the martial stage, all of them widened their eyes in shock. Oh my God! Snow Track Valley has been destroyed. For a time, the news spread rapidly in the northeastern Luzhou, causing a huge sensation. What? When the Palace Lord of the Extreme Coldness Palace received the news, he frowned and said, "The Snow Track Valley has been destroyed." Who did it? The fourth elder said, "We don't know for now." The sixth elder said coldly, "In the Lu region of the northeast, who doesn't know that the Snow Track Valley is attached to our Extreme Cold Palace? Anyone who dares to destroy it will be an enemy of our Extreme Cold Palace. The murderer must be found and severely punished." The elders were filled with righteous indignation. At this moment, the Palace Lord of the Extreme Coldness Palace frowned slightly. This was because when he released his spiritual sense, he discovered that there was a black shadow gradually approaching from the distant sky. What's that? The elders who had reached the martial king level also noticed it, and their eyes were filled with astonishment. Gradually, the black shadow got closer and closer, and their eyes widened. Gradually approaching the sect gate was an incomparably large eagle beast. A white-robed man stood on top of it, and there was an endless murderous intent between his brows. He's coming with ill intentions. The Palace Lord of the Extreme Coldness Palace made a prompt decision and said, "Activate the Sect Protection Array." Buzz! In an instant, the Extreme Coldness Palace, which was situated on the ice mountain, had a stream of light shoot up into the sky, forming the strongest defensive barrier. When the martial artists within a few hundred miles saw the formation rise up, their eyes were filled with shock. It's the Sect Protection Array of the Extreme Coldness Palace. Why is it suddenly activated? Could it be that a strong enemy is invading? The martial artists who lived in the northeastern Lu region all knew that the Extreme Coldness Palace had a Sect Protection Array, but it was usually not activated because no force could pose a threat to this colossus. It was rare for it to be activated today. Why is the sky darkening? Just as many martial artists were at a loss, the originally snow-white sky turned dark. They instinctively looked up and then stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded. In the sky, an eagle beast the size of a mountain flapped its wings and flew over slowly. It then stopped outside the Sect Protection Array of the Extreme Coldness Palace, as if a king had descended. Oh my God! How can there be such a huge eagle? Could this be the reason why the Extreme Coldness Palace activated the Sect Protection Array? Howl! Howl! Right at this moment, there was a series of wolf howls behind them. Shush! Shush! Everyone hurriedly looked back and saw that in the world of ice and snow, countless blue streams of light were speeding past them, bringing along strong winds and layers of snowflakes. The martial cultivators with lower cultivation levels were immediately blown to the left and right by the gale that was brought up. Very soon, the densely packed blue streams of light stopped at the foot of the Extreme Coldness Palace's mountain, revealing burly wolf beasts. The martial artists riding on them were wearing black armor and looked extraordinarily mighty. The martial artists in the northeastern Lu region were dumbfounded. They instantly realized that this group of people was not to be trifled with. Shush! Shush! The upper echelons of the Extreme Coldness Palace walked out of the main hall and looked at the huge eagle beasts hovering outside the array, frowning. Their instincts told them that the eagle beasts were definitely spirit beasts. My friend. The Extreme Coldness Palace Master cupped his hands and said, "Why have you come to the Extreme Coldness Palace?" "To cause trouble," Jun Changshao said coldly. The Extreme Coldness Palace Master and many elders were instantly enraged. Their sect had been established in the northeastern Lu region for thousands of years, but this was the first time they encountered someone who dared to cause trouble so directly. "My friend," the Extreme Coldness Palace Master said coldly, "we have no grudge against each other. Why are you causing trouble?" Jun Changshao said lightly, "My disciple came to the northeastern Lu region to cultivate, and your Extreme Coldness Palace put a wanted man in the entire province. You call this having no grudge against each other? Wanted man in the entire province?" The Extreme Coldness Palace Master suddenly thought of the white-robed lady with the ice attribute that he had been looking for recently. He said in realization, "So she has a sect." "Humph," an elder said coldly, "the girl you're talking about killed a disciple of the Snow Track Valley and injured a disciple of our Extreme Coldness Palace. It's only natural that she's wanted." Jun Changshao touched his nose and said, "So, the Snow Track Valley bullied my disciple, and it's only natural that they were annihilated. It's also natural that I came to visit your Extreme Coldness Palace today." "You annihilated the Snow Track Valley?" The Extreme Coldness Palace Master frowned. Jun Changshao raised his hand and said, "My sect of all times has come to the northeastern Lu region for the first time, and we've specially prepared a generous gift. Please accept it." Whoosh! Xiao Ziji, who was at the foot of the mountain, landed in an open area. He immediately waved his hand and took out the field cannon. Then, he began to calibrate it and aimed the cannon at the entrance of the Extreme Coldness Palace. This gift was very big. Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others hurriedly went around it and covered their ears in advance. "What's that? It looks like a siege weapon. Are we going to attack the Extreme Coldness Palace's sect protecting array?" Boom! A deafening explosion sounded. Many martial artists felt their blood boil, and they could not help but spit out blood. Their eyes were filled with shock. Chapter 585. The sound of the cannons firing was as loud as ever. The martial artists with lower cultivation levels who were closer to the cannons vomited blood. Although those with higher cultivation levels could suppress their surging chi and blood, they could only hear buzzing sounds in their ears. Italian cannons were terrifying. If Li Qingyang were to fire the cannons, it would be more appropriate. Although he was not the 2nd Battalion commander, he was the second disciple of the sect of all times. The sound of the cannons reverberated in the air and did not dissipate for a long time. The martial artists of Lu Zhou who were affected all had fear and shock in their eyes. In their field of vision, wisps of green smoke rose from the long pipes that looked like siege weapons. Dense spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the ground. Xiao Ziji, who was the 2nd Battalion commander, had already covered his ears with his hands. However, he was still staggering and turning in circles. It was obvious that even though he was the closest to the cannons, he could not help but feel a little dizzy. He had reached the peak of Wuzong, and his body was so strong. How could he not be able to withstand the sound of the cannons? When he came to the Extreme Cold Palace, the Patriarch had given him a few crystal cores that contained black spirit energy. Those were the demonic crystal cores he had obtained in the Demon Ridge Valley. Not only were they of high quality, but they also contained terrifying demonic energy. Once they were gathered into cannons and fired by the modified cannons, the power would be unimaginable. This was not possible. After the bombardment, the area around the Extreme Cold Palace was filled with a chilling, eerie aura. It was easy for people to mistakenly think that a high-level evil cultivator had used a powerful evil technique. However, the sect-protecting array of the Extreme Cold Palace was distorted under the bombardment of the modified cannons with demonic energy. However, it quickly recovered and did not break. Patriarch Zhen Dejuan, who was accompanying him, said telepathically, "The sect-protecting array of the Extreme Cold Palace has reached supreme grade." This level was very high. It was comparable to Wu Huang's level. Is that so? Jun Changshao raised his hand. Crack! Xiao Ziji, who had gradually adapted, kicked open the cannons and took out 2 demonic crystal cores to charge them as quickly as possible. The lips of the upper echelon of the extreme cold palace twitched. The martial artists of Lu Zhou in the northeast who were affected were so frightened that they hurriedly retreated. They subconsciously covered their ears and sealed their sense of hearing. "Little friend." The palace lord of the extreme coldness palace hurriedly said, "Let's talk nicely, fire. Fire the cannons, run." Jun Changxiao's angry voice reverberated in the sky. Bang! The field cannon's muzzle suddenly spat out flames, and a black shell seemed to pierce through the endless void, directly blasting the mountain gate of the extreme cold palace. Rumble. The supreme-grade Sect protection formation suffered 2 powerful blows and instantly shattered. The power of the cannonball was not completely neutralized, and the mountain gate that had been built for thousands of years was instantly reduced to nothingness under the bombardment. Hiss! The martial cultivators in the distance all sucked in a breath of cold air, because more than half of the extreme coldness palace's mountain gate had been blown up. Oh my god! These siege weapons were too terrifying. Array Master Zhen Dejuan was also dumbfounded. The ultimate defensive formation was blown apart after 2 bombardments. Even a powerhouse like Wu Huang would not be able to do that. The power of the field artillery bought from the mall should not be underestimated. Especially when it was used to bombard a fixed target, with the spirit core as the driving force, the power unleashed was not something Wu Huang could compare to. If 1 shot could not solve the problem, then 2 shots, 3 shots, countless shots. Jun Patriarch came with endless anger this time. The mountain gate of the extreme coldness palace must be reduced to ashes under the bombardment of the cannonballs. Dragons had reverse scales, and those who touched them would die. Even if you are a 4th-rate sect, even if you have power in Northeast Lu State, you dare to touch my disciple, no matter the reason, no matter who is right or wrong, I will make you bloom on the spot. Pft! The palace master of the extreme coldness palace spat out a mouthful of blood. The Sect protection formation had been in the extreme coldness palace for thousands of years, and countless ancestors had spent a lot of time and resources to build it. Now that it was shattered, the palace master's heart was bleeding. Especially when the mountain gate that represented their dignity was also destroyed. It was even more unacceptable. The higher-ups of the extreme coldness palace were extremely angry. Pucci! The black shadow of the demon ridge flapped its wings and flew over, hovering above the training field. Jun Changxiao looked down at everyone like a high and mighty king, and said, "Hand over my disciple, or the extreme coldness palace will have no value today. This brat is really arrogant." The masters of the certification headquarters and the Heavenly Mandate Academy who were hiding in the dark to protect him all twitched their mouths. He came from thousands of miles away, first destroyed a 7th-rate sect, and now blew up the mountain gate of a 4th-rate sect, and even threatened to destroy it. This was definitely not an ordinary kind of arrogance. The palace master of the extreme coldness palace was furious and said, "Brat, you broke my formation and blew up my mountain gate. Leave your life here today." Whoosh! As he spoke, the 5th-grade Wu Huang's cultivation was fully unleashed, and then he flew up, and powerful spiritual energy erupted like a tsunami. As the leader of a sect, it was impossible for him to hold back at this time. Fight! He had to fight. Boom! The palace master of the extreme coldness palace blasted his palm into the void, and the spiritual energy in the sky gathered and instantly condensed into 4 palm prints, pressing down from different directions at the same speed. For Spirit's elephant palm. This is the trump card of the palace master of the extreme coldness palace. The warriors of Northeast Lu State exclaimed. At the same time, they understood that the palace master of the extreme coldness palace had used his trump card right from the start, and now he was completely furious. Screech! The black eagle of the Devil's Ridge raised its head and screeched. It suddenly flapped its wings, and the space was suddenly stirred up. Immediately, black feathers shot out like sharp swords. Boom! 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 In an instant, the light of the sharp feathers collided with the 4 palm prints, and the sky kept exploding. The dazzling light flickered, stirred up the wind, and ruthlessly disturbed the earth, shocking many martial cultivators. Whoosh! 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 At this moment, Yixingchen flew over and landed on the martial arts field of the Extreme Coldness Palace. He had already taken out the cold light sword in his hand, and his eyes were cold as he said, "A bunch of trash." Whoosh whoosh, an elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace flew over, and without saying a word, he gathered vast spiritual energy and punched out violently with his fists. Yixingchen's lips curled into a disdainful smile. The cold light sword in his hand cut through the void, first breaking the elder's fist print, and then quickly approached him, using the linear speed formula in an instant. Whoosh! 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 Sword chi intertwined like shadows and light. Ta! Yixingchen stood straight, and the cold light sword slightly tilted down, blood gathering at the tip of the sword. The elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace who was standing behind him tilted his head, and blood spurted out from his chest. He fell to the ground with a loud bang. Die! Whoosh! Whoosh! Two elders of the Extreme Coldness Palace rushed over from both sides, forming an explosion of energy. However, before they could attack, their expressions changed drastically, and they quickly formed a defensive wall in front of them. Bang! 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 The bullets hit the barrier. Although they did not shake the two martial kings, the impact of the bullets sent them flying. Crack! At the ruins of the mountain gate that had been blasted open, Xiao Ziji smoothly pulled the bolt and set up the AWM sniper rifle. Leaning against the 8x scope, he said in a cold voice, "Everyone, don't move." The two martial kings who were sent flying felt their blood boiling, and their expressions were extremely ugly. What was that in his hand? How could it produce such a strong force? Whoosh! Whoosh! Su Xiaoma and Li Fei used the cloud-treading steps and flew over. The two of them landed behind Yixingchen and shouted in a voice that made goosebumps rise. "Senior sister, we're here. We won't forgive anyone who bullies you." Yes. The people from the Sect of all times were here. At this moment, anyone who bullied Lu Qianxian, regardless of whether Jun Changshao agreed or not, her junior brothers and junior sisters would not agree. Even if they were enemies with the entire world. The falling star continent, which had been peaceful for too long, needed such impulsive and hot-blooded forces to inject their souls and vitality. Chapter 586. Senior sister, we're here. Whoever bullies you, we won't let them off. When Su Xiaoma and Li Fei shouted these words, they disturbed the sky and lingered for a long time. Awo! Awo! The hurricane wolves flew over. Under the leadership of Zhongyi, 1,000 wolf riders stood on the Extreme Coldness Palace's martial arts field like mighty masters. At that moment, tens of thousands of Extreme Coldness Palace disciples rushed out from the inner court. However, in terms of aura, they couldn't be compared to the disciples of the Sect of all times. Because these people all straightened their backs and exuded a strong aura that could only be described as unyielding. Although the Sect had changed its name, but the principle of being unyielding people and doing unyielding things would never be erased. Amazing! The experts who were hiding in the dark to protect Jun Patriarch looked at the imposing aura of the disciples of the Sect of all times with admiration. This sect had just risen and didn't have any cowardice in the face of a fourth-rate sect. How did they train? As martial cultivators of the southwest Yangzhou, under the influence of the aura of the disciples of the Sect of all times, a strong sense of pride suddenly rose in their hearts. Who said that the strength of our prefecture was weak? Who said that the strength of our prefecture could be trampled on? Today, I'll let you see the rising supernova of the southwest Yangzhou, a top 3 sect. Whoosh whoosh in the sky, the energy gradually dissipated. Jun Changshao's eyes flashed coldly as he stood on the Black Eagle of the Demon Ridge. The palace master of the Extreme Coldness Palace had an extremely ugly expression. Just now, she had used her trump card, but it was easily broken by that eagle beast. Its strength was probably not weaker than her. Nonsense. Without enough combat strength, why would June Patriarch rush over so recklessly? Your extreme coldness palace has a martial king, so does my sect of all times. Your extreme coldness palace has Wu Huang, so does my sect of all times. What was there to be afraid of? Beat him. Jun Changshao raised his hand and pointed at the main hall. He said coldly, "Disciples, listen to my order. Flatten the extreme coldness palace." Yes. All the disciples roared in unison, their voices shaking the 9 heavens. Clang clang clang. Long Xiang and the others took out their cold-edged sword, overlord spear, and even their iron shields. Strong killing intent surged out from their bodies. Li Tian and Viper carried their sniper rifles on their backs. They had already occupied the highest vantage point. The bullets were loaded, the safety pins were pulled, and they locked onto the crowd opposite them. Brother Snake. I'm not nervous at all. I only hope that you won't hit a fellow disciple. The disciples of the sect of all times were filled with murderous intent. The palace master of the extreme coldness palace said in a low voice, "Anyone who offends the extreme coldness palace can forget about leaving alive." The mountain gate had been forcefully broken open, and their own elders had been killed. As long as they had the courage, they would never compromise. Shwa! Shwa! In an instant, more than 10 martial king realm elders of the extreme coldness palace rushed out of the main hall with powerful spiritual energy. The violent energy caused space to distort. Swoosh! Whoosh! The Ning brothers flew over, waving their arms as they stood. Blazing blades of flame instantly condensed, and with a force of 10,000 pounds, they blasted over. Not good. Dodge! The elders of the extreme coldness palace cried out in alarm. Unfortunately, they were still one step too late. The 2 martial kings couldn't dodge in time and were directly hit by the blazing blades. A shocking wound appeared on their chests, and they fell onto the stone platform of the main hall like cannonballs. The blazing blade of the red sky, which was bought from the shop, displayed a terrifying combat strength when used by Ning Duxing and Ning Duzue. Ta! Yi Xingqian took a step forward, and the floor under his feet caved in. His right fist, which was filled with spiritual energy, suddenly punched out in the air, and directly blasted a martial king who rushed over. Bang! That elder crashed into the stone platform. His entire body caved in, and his right fist was broken. He also fainted on the verge of death. Another instant kill. Although Yi Yaojiao had just entered the martial king realm, her strength was not inferior to that of a 4th or 5th grade martial king. Boom! Boom! At this moment, bullets shot past him and accurately hit another elder from the extreme cold palace who was attacking him, sending him flying. Xiao Ziji pulled the bolt, and the corner of his mouth raised into a smile. "Tsk," Yi Xingqian said indifferently, meddling in other people's business. Although Xiao Ziji's help was obviously superfluous, Night Emperor's state of mind changed a little when a fellow disciple helped him in this kind of situation. Sometimes. He often thought that when he returned to the peak, he would seek revenge from his enemies. Perhaps they would also accompany him and face danger together, just like how they came to save Lu Qianqian today. Yi Yaojiao had really changed. With his previous personality, he would not have such a strange idea. "Senior brother." Zhou Hong appeared behind him and said, "Get out of the way." While thinking, Yi Xingqian leaned to the side, and gave way to the front. Clang! Sword momentum, graceful. Whoosh! In the void, sword light flashed. At that moment, space seemed to be directly torn apart, and an extremely powerful sword might was emitted. Pucci! The sound of blood splashing could be heard. That elder of the extreme coldness palace who rushed over was directly cut in half at the waist by the unparalleled sword energy. Sword King! The eyes of the experts hiding in the dark were filled with shock. That disciple called Yi Xingqian was a martial king, which was enough to shock them. They did not expect that there would be another disciple who was a sword king. After Zhou Hong made his move, the hidden experts were not the only ones who were shocked. The expressions of the extreme coldness palace elders who were eager to give it a try also changed. The Sword King. The most unreasonable existence in the king level. Even if their strength was higher, it would not be surprising if they were killed in an instant. The gaze of the extreme coldness palace master gradually turned gloomy. First, he flew over on an eagle beast comparable to Wu Huang. Then, he used siege weapons to blast open the mountain gate. Now, the people he brought were so powerful. He really did not come with good intentions. Kill! Zhong Yi shouted. Howl! Howl! Thousands of wolf riders drove their hurricane wolves, dragging a blue light behind them, and charged forward like a sharp sword. In this battle, they were facing tens of thousands of disciples of a fourth-rate sect. They were definitely stronger than the White Tiger Corps, but they still carried out a crazy slaughter with invincibility. There was no other reason. After a period of training and cultivation, the strength of the members of the Wolf Rider Hall had greatly improved. Boom! Boom! The light of martial techniques and weapons shone on the training ground with thousands of years of history. The disciples of the extreme coldness palace fell one after another, like weeds being harvested by the wolf riders. Speaking of which, as a fourth-rate sect, what about the inner disciples or direct disciples of the extreme coldness palace? Yes. They were currently being beaten up by Sima Zhongda and Cui Bujian. The stronger ones would be dealt with by Long Xiang, Song Xianzhou, and the others. In short, the top disciples of the fourth-rate sect were completely beaten up by the disciples of the sect of all times. The core disciples, Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji, were already fighting with the martial king elders. They did not care at all. Difference. This was the difference. The hidden experts in charge of protection twitched the corners of their mouths. The few main disciples of the sect of all times, with their peak Wuzong cultivation, were actually on par with the martial king elders. This was too frightening. Bang! 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 On the commanding heights, Li Tiantian fired frequently. The bullets brushed past the heads of his fellow disciples, killing the stronger disciples of the extreme coldness palace on the spot. The Ning brothers' robes fluttered without wind. They used all kinds of martial techniques and tangled with the martial king elders. Not only were they not at a disadvantage, they were completely suppressing their opponents. The situation was one-sided. Jun Changshao raised one hand and the green dragon crescent blade appeared out of nowhere. He said with a cold gaze, "Extreme coldness palace master, let's fight." Wu Shi jumped, as if he wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with the sun. Wush, the mighty and extraordinary soul of Wusheng, appeared instantly, flashing with colorful lights. The 7th-grade martial king swordsman and the sword will merged into the green dragon crescent blade and slashed 4 times in a row. Crack crack crack, the violent blade energy tore through the air, whistling with the sound of a dragon's roar. The expression of the extreme coldness palace master changed greatly. At this moment, he had to face it head-on. If he chose to dodge, the palace behind him that had stood in the wind and rain for thousands of years would no longer exist. Chapter 587. When Wu Huang of the West Cloud State came to fight, Jun Changshao activated Wu Sheng's soul and the 5 elements, but he could not win. In the end, he had no choice but to use the all-returning swords. Until today. He, who had advanced 3 grades in a row, once again activated the green dragon crescent blade. When he swung the blade, the power that erupted was completely different from before. Crack! Crack! Space was directly torn apart by the 5 elements blade aura. The violent spiritual energy and sword momentum shook the sky and shocked all living beings. The extreme coldness palace master exclaimed, "Sword! Sword and martial king!" Thud! There was no time for him to think. Wu Huang fully activated his cultivation. He suddenly blasted the void with his palms and shouted, "9th level chaotic prime, extreme coldness." Hum! Hum! In an instant, the space above the main hall trembled violently. Then, it transformed into a Tai Chi pattern formed by the ice element, forming a barrier similar to a defensive barrier. The sect's ultimate martial art. The martial cultivators in the distance exclaimed in unison. The 9th level Chaotic Prime, Extreme Coldness Palace, was a very advanced sacred ice element defensive martial art. It was also known as the sect's ultimate martial art. Powerful sects all had their ultimate martial arts. However, the sect of all times did not. Because other than the early low-level martial arts, the current 7 Mystic Rays Break, Red Sky Flame Slash, and other martial arts could be used as the sect's ultimate martial arts. The 9th level Chaotic Prime, Extreme Coldness Palace, materialized into an ice element Tai Chi pattern, exuding a heavy aura. The Extreme Coldness Palace master's face was pale. He had to block the other party's 4 slashes no matter what because it concerned the safety of the sect's main hall. The sect's gate was broken, and his dignity was trampled on. If he could not even protect the sect's main hall, how could he face his ancestors in the netherworld 100 years later? Boom! 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 The blade aura with supreme power tore the space apart and slammed into the Tai Chi pattern, causing it to tremble violently. The Extreme Coldness Palace master's chi and blood churned violently, but the spiritual energy in his body continued to erupt wildly. In the end, he stabilized the 9th level Chaotic Prime, Extreme Coldness Palace. He withstood it. However, it was not over. Jun Changshao, who took advantage of the situation, raised the green dragon crescent blade again. With the soul of Wu Xing's blessing, he slashed again. Boom! 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 Another 3 incomparably powerful saber chi slammed into the ice-type Tai Chi diagram, bringing about an even more powerful impact. Every slash from Jun Changshao contained the power of the 5 elements. It was truly powerful. Although the Palace Master of Extreme Coldness Palace managed to stabilize himself with great difficulty, the spirit energy in his body was being rapidly consumed. This was Wu Huang, a level 5 martial artist. In terms of strength, he was 2 levels higher than Wu Huang of the Xingyan sect. The battle prowess of Jun Changshao, who had advanced by 3 grades, was truly explosive. If he were to exchange blows with Gu Tuhong again, he would definitely be able to defeat him even without using the 10,000 ancestral swords. The Palace Master of the Extreme Coldness Palace had a ferocious look on his face as he roared, "Who the hell are you?" The mountain gate had been blasted open, and many disciples and elders had been killed. They still did not know the identity of the intruder. This was truly a tragedy. Jun Changshao raised his green dragon crescent blade again and shouted, "Southwest Yangzhou, Qingyang County, Patriarch of the Sect of all times, Jun Changshao." His voice was as loud as a bell, reverberating between heaven and earth. Sect of all times. Jun Changshao. The sect that used to be called the Iron Bone Clan. Boom! 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 At this moment, several saber chi slammed into the ice-type Tai Chi diagram again. The latter could not withstand it anymore. With a cracking sound, dense cracks appeared. It was broken. With a few more slashes, it would definitely be broken. The Palace Master of Extreme Coldness Palace said angrily, "A sect from southwest Yangzhou dares to come to northeast Luzhou. This is unforgivable." Whoosh! Whoosh! The cold air in the sky suddenly rose. The falling snowflakes instantly turned into ice cubes, then quickly gathered together to form 4 lifelike ice dragons. Roar! The dragon's roar resounded between heaven and earth. Oh my god, the Palace Master of Extreme Coldness Palace has performed the sect's ultimate martial art, Sky Ice Dragon. Many martial artists widened their eyes. Whoosh! Whoosh! It was as if 4 ice dragons were circling between the heavens and the earth, dragging their long bodies as they attacked. The extreme coldness seemed to be able to freeze even the air. Screech! The Demon Ridge Black Eagle raised its head and screeched. 2 huge and sharp claws tore through the air, like an eagle catching 2 chicks, and directly bound the 2 ice dragons. Then, they were crushed into pieces. 5th grade Wu Huang was very strong. However, Jun Patriarch still had contract beasts. Don't say that one man and one beast fighting one is unfair. If you have the ability, catch one and fight with me. Roar! The other two ice dragons rushed over from both sides. They did not attack the Demon Ridge Black Eagle, but Jun Changshao. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, a monstrous flame suddenly erupted in mid-air, instantly dispersing the extremely cold air, making the entire extreme coldness palace as warm as spring. Jun Changshao, who was falling, landed in the flame, and his solid red armor quickly condensed. He looked so handsome. Whoosh! Whoosh! Little Longlong's human head appeared from the scorching flame, and it said in a childish voice, "No one can hurt my master." I was wrong just now. It was not one man and one beast, but one man and two beasts fighting one. Whoosh! The light of the flame flashed by. One of the ice dragons that rushed over had its head hugged by little dragonling. Dry and clumsy, not round at all. Whoosh! Whoosh! The scorching flames suddenly soared, and the extremely hard body of the ice dragon was suddenly wiped off the edges and sharpness. In the blink of an eye, a lifelike ice dragon was killed by little Longlong, and it was directly evaporated by the high-temperature flame. Water can carry a boat, but it can also cook porridge. When the scorching flame reached the extreme, even the coldest attribute could be melted and evaporated. Whoosh! Little Longlong hugged another ice dragon with the monstrous flame again and quickly killed it. Whoosh! Jun Changshao slashed down with the green dragon crescent blade again. The already shaky ice enchantment could no longer hold on and finally shattered into nothingness. Puff! The palace master of the extreme coldness palace spat out blood and took a few steps back weakly. Two of his sect's martial arts were broken one after another, causing a huge backlash. Without two contract beasts at the level of Wu Huang, he could fight with Jun Changshao. Now, not to mention the sword and martial king, even little Longlong and the Black Eagle of the Demon Ridge could not do anything. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the sky, the Black Eagle of the Demon Ridge flapped its wings, creating a strong whirlwind that made the hall tremble violently. Whoosh! Whoosh! Little Longlong, whose whole body was covered in flames except for its head, stopped in midair and opened its right palm to catch its master who was falling down. Whoosh! Jun Changshao stood with his blade and said lightly, "The palace master of the extreme coldness palace is just a so-so." His surname was Jun Jun, who ruled the world. Kill! Kill! On the martial arts field, Zhong Yi led the Wolf Rider Hall and was still killing without restraint. Thousands of disciples of the extreme coldness palace were lying on the ground. As for their high-level forces, they were also held back by Yi Xingchen, Zhou Hong, and the Ning brothers. However, at this time, no one noticed that Jin Dejuan, the old man, was strolling around the outer courtyard of the extreme coldness palace, inserting array flags into the ground. Patriarch. After a while, he opened his arms, and a strange smile appeared on his face. I want to raze this fourth-rate sect to the ground. Buzz! In an instant, streams of light shot into the sky from the extreme coldness palace, forming an array that emitted the power of thunder. Not good. An elder of the extreme coldness palace who had studied arrays exclaimed, "This is a thunder-gathering array." Wrong. Jin Dejuan shook his finger and said, "This is a chain thunder-gathering array that I have just researched. Once it explodes, not to mention the extreme coldness palace, even the surrounding 100 miles will be razed to the ground." What? The expressions of the high-level members of the extreme coldness palace changed greatly. Kakik. Jin Dejuan's smile became even more distorted, as if he was a complete pervert. He lowered his voice and said, "Are you afraid? Today is Monday. I have 3,099 recommendation votes. Babies, if the votes can exceed 4,000, I will add more." Chapter 588. Jin Dejuan had set up a chain of thunder arrays in the extreme cold palace. He was eager to detonate it to admire his masterpiece. This was a lunatic. However, there was another lunatic. That was Jun Changshao. He stood proudly on little Longlong's palm and said coldly, "Hand over my disciple. Otherwise, the extreme cold palace will completely disappear from this world." The palace lord of the extreme cold palace was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. A sect from Yangzhou in the southwest dared to come to Luzhou in the northeast. It was intolerable. However, in the current situation, he had to compromise because the sect might really be razed to the ground. Jun Patriarch. The palace lord of the extreme cold palace gritted his teeth and said, "My palace did put a bounty on your disciple, but after the battle at the boundless ice sea, we lost track of her. We are still looking for her." Bullshit. Jun Changshao said, "I have received the news that my disciple has been captured by you. You are still making excuses. Do you really think I don't dare to destroy the extreme cold palace?" Patriarch. Zhen Dejuan said coldly, "Let me detonate the array directly." Jun Patriarch couldn't wait to kick him out of the Milky Way galaxy. "My precious disciple hasn't been found yet. If you detonate the array, won't that be the same as harming her?" Jun Changshao was very calm. If it weren't for Lu Qianshan, he could have fired a few more cannonballs outside and razed the extreme cold palace to the ground. Jun Patriarch. The palace lord of the extreme cold palace said with an ashen face, "Your disciple is really not in the extreme cold palace. The so-called news may be a false rumor." Jun Changshao couldn't believe it. He said, "It seems that you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Kill them for me. Kill. Kill. Poof. Poof." Zhong Yi and the others rode on the hurricane wolves and continued to kill crazily on the training field. The disciples of the extreme cold palace were no match for them. "We can't let him continue to act recklessly. Otherwise, it will cause public outrage in Luzhou in the northeast." The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy hiding in the dark were about to appear and stop them. But it was too late. Because in the sky, there were as many as 8 streams of light streaking across the sky and arrived above the extreme cold palace in the shortest time. As the light dissipated, 8 magnificent martial emperors appeared. These people were the sect master of the fourth-rate Xianling sect, the valley master of the fourth-rate Ice Peak Valley, the sect master of the fourth-rate Frost sect, and the sect master of the fourth-rate Ice Soul sect. "This is troublesome." The cultivators of the Mandate Academy frowned. The experts sent by the certification headquarters were also filled with bitterness. Most of the sects in Lu Prefecture in the northeast had been passed down from the Ice Emperor's bloodline 10,000 years ago. Although they usually fought openly and secretly, they were definitely united against outsiders. "Sect Master," Zhen Dejuan said solemnly, "let's retreat." As a veteran, Zhen Dejuan knew when to act cool and when to keep a low profile. The 8 martial emperors hovered in the air above the extreme cold palace. They frowned as they watched the disciples being slaughtered. "Brat." The patriarch of the Xianling sect said coldly, "What grudge do you have against the extreme cold palace?" Whoosh whoosh, the aura of the 8 Wuhuang spread throughout the outer yard. Although the disciples of the sect of all times could resist, they instinctively stopped and retreated to the ruins of the gate. The current situation was 9 sect masters of fourth-rate sects, 9 Wuhuang were confronting the sect of all times. A photo would definitely be voted as the most shocking photo of the year. Jun Changshao didn't panic at all in the face of so many Wuhuang. He said, "Bullying my disciples is a grudge and a grudge. Everyone." The palace master of the extreme cold palace said angrily, "This brat is the patriarch of the sect of all times in Yangzhou. He said that he would destroy the extreme cold palace." He was secretly relieved that the 8 sect masters had come to his aid. To be honest, the extreme cold palace would really be in trouble today if there were no reinforcements. "Oh?" The valley master of the Ice Mountain Valley sneered. "The sect that was rated as one of the top 3 and changed its name? I heard that the sect master of this sect is the Sword King and Martial King. We talked about it before." I didn't expect to see him in person today, the patriarch of the freezing sect said lightly. Don't be fooled by their calm expressions, they were quite shocked in their hearts. The sect of all time seemed to have risen overnight. Now, they could destroy the gate of the extreme cold palace. It was impossible to do so without some strength. Everyone. Jun Changshao said lightly, I'm not a person who holds grudges. Let go of my eldest disciple and we'll forget about this. Hearing this, the mouth of the expert hiding in the dark twitched violently. Jun Patriarch. You destroyed their gate and killed so many disciples. 8 sect masters came to help. It would be a miracle if they could let you leave. Forget about this. The palace master of the extreme cold palace said with a ferocious expression, Jun Changshao, you and your disciple must leave your life in the extreme cold palace today. Jun Changshao said, you mean you won't let my disciple go? Let my foot go. Your disciple is not in the extreme cold palace at all. If there were no reinforcements, he might have said it. But now, he was full of confidence. He sneered and said, even if your sect of all time's disciple is in the extreme cold palace, I won't let him go. You've got guts. Jun Changshao raised his hand and said telepathically, retreat. They were terrified. The 8 Wu Huang were eyeing them covetously. They had no choice but to be terrified. Damn it. Wait until I find a way to save my eldest disciple. I'll play with you until you're in so much pain that you'll wish you were dead. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sect of all time's disciples received the order and retreated from the extreme cold palace at lightning speed. Would the 8 Wu Huang watch them retreat? Of course not. Huff huff in an instant, 8 Wu Huang's auras exploded, forming an overwhelming force that shrouded the sect of all time's disciples. Screech! The Demon Ridge Black Eagle landed at the mountain gate. It waved its arms and created a gust of wind that blew away the Wu Huang's auras. Even so, it did not completely dissolve the auras, and there were still some remaining auras. Just as the auras touched the sect of all time's disciples, a scorching flame exploded and cleared the auras instantly. Little Long Long and the Demon Ridge Black Eagle were on par with the auras of the 8 Wu Huang. Strong. Very strong. Jun Changshao said coldly, if anything happens to my disciple, I'll make everyone in the extreme cold palace pay with their blood. Whoosh! Little Long Long carried him and left. Kid! The Xianling sect patriarch waved his hand, and a vast force gathered in the sky. He shouted coldly, you can't leave. He was a ranked 7 Wu Huang and was very powerful. Master! Little Long Long swung his arm and tossed Jun Changshao to the side. His eyes flashed with fighting spirit as he said, I'll bring up the rear. Huff huff scorching flames erupted, and soon after, they converged into a vortex that resembled a tornado. Like a dragon rising from Mount Lu, it directly met the martial emperor's force that was pressing down. Boom! Little Long Long broke the Xianling sect patriarch's move with one punch and landed at the mountain gate. Then, he pouted. Huff huff the flames around him burned wildly and gradually expanded as if firewood was added to it. Boom! Little Long Long stepped on the ground, and his body turned from a child to a giant. He said with a deep voice, dry and clumsy. Not round at all. Screech the Demon Ridge Black Eagle raised its head and roared. Its huge wings suddenly retracted, and its entire body was surrounded by black aura. Then, light laughter came from inside. You humans are so annoying. Little Long Long was stunned. He looked down and saw a black-haired girl with a graceful figure walking out of the black aura barefoot. She wore a black feather coat, and her eyes were as black as the stars. Very cute. You are. Little Long Long was stunned. The big bird just now. The black-haired girl flipped her black hair and said proudly, call me queen. Chapter 589. Jun Changshao, who was outside the mountain gate, widened his eyes when he saw the Demon Ridge Black Eagle transform into a girl. My contract beast also has a combat form, and it's actually a girl. That little look, that sweet voice, how can it be so cute? I can't take it anymore. My little heart is about to explode from her cuteness. Especially when he thought about how she would stand on the eagle beast and act cool after subduing it. June Patriarch wanted to slap his own face with his shoe. Such a cute girl riding on the eagle's head, this is definitely a sin. The humanoid demon ridge black eagle was not old, and its skin was pink like a porcelain doll. It was really cute. However, little Long Long stared with its big round eyes and said fiercely, "Queen? Get lost." "You," the demon ridge black eagle said in disbelief, "how dare you yell at me?" "So what if I'm yelling at you?" Little Long Long said impatiently. "Little baby who hasn't weaned off milk, hurry up and drink milk. Don't delay me from showing off my power here." The demon ridge black eagle looked at Jun Changshao with grievances in its eyes. "This little bug bullied me. Master, please help me." "Ignore it," Jun Changshao said, "a guy destined to be alone for life." "System," he said it as if it could bloom. Huff huff. At this moment, the Xianling Sect Patriarch and the other Wu Huang flew over. Vast spiritual energy erupted and crazily squeezed the space. "Get lost." Little Long Long pushed the demon ridge black eagle away, raised its arms shrouded in hot flames, and smashed into the void. Boom! The space shook, and the heat spread. The power of the two Wu Huang was directly broken, and they took 2 steps back with shock in their eyes. This big guy with flames was actually so powerful. Heaven and Earth Ice Seal. The Shanghan Sect Patriarch flew over, and a cold aura spread. The space was frozen as if it had turned into a solid mirror. These martial emperors from Lu province in the northeast were all genuine ice cultivators. They were extremely adept at using ice martial skills. It was a pity. No matter how strong the ice was, it would be melted when it met a hotter fire. Little Long Long was like a fire in winter, and the raging flames warmed everyone's hearts. "Ah!" He let out a loud cry and spread out his arms. Scorching flames burned wildly, causing the rapidly dropping temperature in the surroundings to be pulled back in an instant. The frozen space felt warmth being released from the seal, but because of the sudden change in temperature, it instantly shattered like a mirror. "Oh my God!" In the distance, the martial artists of Lu Prefecture in the northeast were dumbfounded. When had they ever been lucky enough to witness a power that could stir the void with just a wave of his hand? This was a fight between immortals. Who, at this moment, another sect leader crossed his hands and gathered ice-type spiritual energy in his palms. He roared, "Ice spirit cold light. Ka ka ka." Cold air whizzed out and quickly condensed into a huge icicle, which pierced toward Su Chen with boundless power. Little Long Long, who had just broken a patriarch's martial skill, was unable to divert his attention to defend himself. He could only watch as the ice attribute martial skill killed him. Whoosh! At this moment, a whirlwind appeared behind him and blew over, instantly cutting the icicle into pieces. Whoosh! The black eagle of the demon ridge tapped on its tiptoes and spread its wings. It flew into the air and drew a special pattern in the air with its small white hand. Then, it said, "Little bug, I'll deal with you after I kill these people." Tut! The little girl clapped her hands on the pattern that looked both real and illusory. Then, black feathers appeared out of thin air, emitting powerful energy. "Fairy powder." She paused and said, "Feathers." Little Long Long almost fell down. Fairy powder feathers? What the hell was that? Whoosh! 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 The black feathers all over the sky were like bullets, instantly shooting toward the outer courtyard of the extreme cold palace. The 8 Wu Huang's faces changed dramatically because of the wide coverage. The palace master of the extreme cold palace exclaimed, "Protect our palace." Whoosh! Whoosh! As soon as the palace master finished his words, several Wu Huang flew over. Cold air instantly spread out and formed solid ice walls in front of them. Boom! 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 The black feathers hit the ice walls, creating explosions and aftershocks. Looking from afar, one could see that ripples were spreading crazily, and the whole world was shaking. So powerful! Jun Changshao, who had already retreated from the extreme cold palace, was overjoyed. Ha ha ha! My contract beast is not only cute but also good at fighting. Whoosh! Little Long Long didn't want to be outdone by a girl. It dragged its huge body and attacked with flames that seemed to be able to burn the world. For a moment. In the sky above the extreme cold palace, violent energy exploded crazily, and the space was distorted. It was like the end of the world. Sigh. Jin Dejuan put his hands behind his back and said, "Why didn't the patriarch allow me to blow up the extreme cold palace?" At this moment, the chain thunder gathering array on the martial arts field was shaking because of the extreme distortion of space. If they didn't detonate it now, they wouldn't have a chance. Let's go. Jun Changshao ordered the disciples to retreat. He didn't expect that 8 Wu Huang would come to his rescue. Since he couldn't defeat them, he had to retreat tactically and think of a way to save Lu Qianshan. Patriarch. At this moment, Su Xiaomo exclaimed, "Look, it's senior sister. Over there, over there." Jun Changshao hurriedly looked in the direction of his finger and saw Lu Qianshan floating on a lonely peak in front of him. Her eyes were filled with complicated emotions. She didn't expect that the patriarch and her fellow disciples would come to Northeast Lu province for her and fight with the extreme cold palace. At that moment, her heart like still water realm cracked again. Sigh. It would be very difficult to repair it, senior sister. Senior sister. The disciples shouted excitedly. Seeing that his eldest disciple appeared safe and sound, Jun Changshao let out a long sigh of relief and murmured, "She's lost weight." Wait! Wasn't she taken away by the extreme cold palace? How could she appear here? Li Luocho said, "Patriarch, I just received news that the information I received was wrong. The extreme cold palace didn't find Lu Qianshan." The corner of Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. Big sister, can't the information be more accurate? He couldn't blame Li Luocho for the wrong information. The information network hadn't been fully developed yet, so it was inevitable that there would be negligence in the screening. Boom! There was a loud explosion behind him. Little Dragon was bombarded by 4 Wu Huang. Its huge body fell from the mountain gate to the foot of the mountain. It gritted its teeth and said, "It hurts." Boom! Boom! In the sky above the extreme cold palace, the other 4 Wu Huang were fighting with the petite Devil Ridge Black Eagle. However, because they were outnumbered, they gradually fell into a passive position. Patriarch. Jin Dejuan asked again, "Do you blow it up or not?" The veins on Jun Changshao's neck were bulging. He shouted angrily, "Blow it up." Okay. Jin Dejuan covered his face with one hand and laughed like a madman. Whoosh! Suddenly, he opened his arms and said with a ferocious expression, "Next, please enjoy a beautiful fireworks feast." Buzz! Buzz! The space of the extreme cold palace suddenly vibrated rhythmically. The array barrier, which had been hidden in the dark, appeared again and produced a hot and dazzling light. As a spirit beast, the Black Eagle of the Devil Ridge had a stronger sense of danger than humans. It gathered a whirlwind to repel a martial emperor. Then it hurriedly flapped its wings and flew out like the wind. It grabbed the little dragon's big ear with one hand and sped toward its master. Oh no! The 8 Wu Huang smelled danger. But it was already too late. After the formation flashed with light, it instantly turned into a cold light and then exploded with a boom. The mountain that supported the extreme cold palace directly bloomed in front of everyone's eyes. Chapter 590. Boom! Boom! The sound of the explosion was incessant, and everyone within 1,000 miles could hear it clearly. The entire ground was shaking, and all the cultivators in it looked at the extreme coldness palace in horror. What happened? The cultivators of Lu Prefecture were dumbfounded. This level of vibration must have been caused by a huge explosion. Hiss 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 hiss, the extreme coldness palace. No, half of the mountain that had been blown up was still sputtering restlessly. It was obvious that the remaining power had not completely dissipated. Jun Changxiao's eyes were filled with disbelief. Lu Qianqian appeared on the mountain peak and was not in the extreme coldness palace. Little Long Long was also sent flying. He directly took Zhen Dejuan's advice and chose to detonate the array. However, this kind of power and destructive power was too frightening. Even a field cannon could not do this. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were also dumbfounded. Especially when they thought of the series of explosions that were more brilliant than fireworks, a chill ran down their spines. Sigh. Zhen Dejuan shook his head and said, "The power did not meet expectations. We need to improve it when we go back." Everyone's mouth twitched. The entire mountain was blown up, and it did not meet expectations. If you want to improve it, you might have to raise everything within 100 miles to the ground. Wait. Jun Changxiao said, "Elder Zhen, didn't you just say that once you detonate the array, you can raise everything within 100 miles to the ground?" That's right. Everyone also remembered. He did say that, and he asked the people of the extreme coldness palace if they were afraid. Zhen Dejuan put his hands behind his back and let the cold wind blow on his face. He said shamelessly, "When facing a strong enemy, if you can say something big, you have to say something big. Only then can you scare them." Fuck. After all this time, he was just bragging. Everyone rolled their eyes. However, it was still very powerful to blow up half of the extreme coldness palace with just the array. Li Qingyang and the others finally realized why no one in the Falling Star continent was willing to offend array masters. It was too scary. Too scary. Especially a lunatic like Elder Zhen. Whoever provoked him would squat in front of their house all day planting time bombs. Just thinking about it sent chills down their spines. Elder Zhen. Su Xiaoma leaned over and said with a trembling smile, "Can you teach me? If anyone provokes me in the future, I'll set up a formation in their latrine and blow them up until they shit and piss all over the place." Zhen Dejuan rolled his eyes at him and said, "You don't have the talent for formations. Go play in the mud." Poochie. Poochie. The black shadow of the demon ridge flapped its wings and flew over. It threw the little dragon down and said, "Master, this little bug was almost killed by the explosion." Bullshit. Little Long Long stood up angrily and said, "Even if you don't pull me, I can still dodge." TSK. The demon ridge black eagle snorted and landed in front of Jun Changxiao. It smiled sweetly and said, "Master, I did well just now, didn't I?" "Not bad, not bad." Jun Changxiao gave him a head rub. The Black Hawk of the Demon Ridge was only 11 or 12 years old. When she stood with Jun Patriarch, who was more than 1.8 meters tall, they looked like father and daughter. Of course. The most eye-catching thing was the pair of wings that were as black as ink. So beautiful. Su Xiaoma walked over and said with a smile, "Girl, can I touch it?" Swoosh! The Black Hawk of the Demon Ridge turned around and the smile on her face disappeared. Her bright eyes flashed coldly and said, "Remember, call me Queen." The speed at which she changed her face was too fast. Su Xiaoma shuddered and hurriedly said, "Yes, Lord." Whoosh! At this moment, violent energy surged out of the half-blown mountain. 8 sect leaders flew out of the lightning in an extremely sorry state. The explosion came too suddenly and they couldn't dodge it at all. Fortunately, their strength was very strong and could withstand the bombardment of the thunder power. However, they were inevitably beaten black and blue. The most miserable one was the palace master of the extreme coldness palace. He floated in the air with his back facing Jun Changxiao and the others. His arms were spread wide open, and his whole body was charred black. Even his hair was standing on end, and black smoke was rising from it. Right in front. Although the main hall that had stood for thousands of years was broken in many places, it was still in ruins. More than half of the inner courtyard of the sect survived under his protection. When the explosion arrived, the palace master of the extreme coldness palace didn't think about protecting himself. Instead, he thought about using his body to protect the main hall that represented the legacy and the soul of the sect. Because, in his opinion, people could die, but the dignity of the sect must be defended. Thud! Thud! The upper echelons of the extreme coldness palace fell into the ruins one by one. Although they didn't fly up and use their bodies to defend the dignity of the sect, they stood in front of the main hall and formed a human wall to protect the lifeline of the sect and more disciples. Impressive! Jun Changshao cupped his fists and said. He didn't regret his decision to blow up the extreme coldness palace, nor would he feel pity. However, at the critical moment, they used their bodies to defend the dignity of the sect without caring about their lives. That alone was worthy of respect. Jun Changshao. The palace master of the extreme coldness palace landed weakly in front of the main hall. His eyes were bloodshot as he said, "The humiliation that you gave the extreme coldness palace today will be returned 100 times in the future." Jun Changshao turned around and said arrogantly, "I'll be waiting for you at Mount Ironbone." Brat! The Xianling sect patriarch said angrily, "Do you think you can leave?" Whoosh! As soon as he said that, Little Long Long slammed his palms into the air. Two explosive fire pillars rushed toward him, shocking him so much that he hurriedly retreated. Swoosh! 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 The other 7 Wu Huang swiftly flew over and blocked Jun Changshao and the rest's escape route. They came to northeast Lu State to cause trouble and almost blew up the extreme coldness palace into ruins. If the sect of all times were to leave peacefully like this, where would their dignity be? Everyone. Jun Changshao said calmly, "I found my eldest disciple. It should be the time for me to ask about his well-being, but all of you are flying around like flies. It's really annoying." "Master," Little Long Long said, "all of you leave first. I'll cover you." "No need." Jun Changshao raised his hand, and the pocket-sized hard-to-keep saber appeared in his palm. With a cold gaze, he said, "I haven't killed Wu Huang before. I don't mind killing 8 of you today. This saber." Li Qingyang and the rest's expressions changed drastically. In Death Valley, in the spirit stone mine full of snake beasts, they had all seen it. It was definitely a divine weapon that made people tremble in fear. The patriarch took it out again today. He wanted to use Wu Huang's blood as a sacrifice to the saber. "Humph." The Xianling sect patriarch said coldly, "Killing 8 of us? Jun patriarch is really not afraid of biting his tongue." Huff huff. The other 7 Wu Huang released their cultivation levels simultaneously, and a strong suppressive aura pressed down on them like a landslide. Jun Changshao placed 2 fingers on the hilt of hard-to-keep saber and pinched the opening talisman in his space ring. However, just as he was about to crush it and take out the 40-meter-long saber, Lu Qianqian flew over and landed in front of Jun Changshao. She instinctively protected him behind her and raised her hand, revealing an item. "The Ice Emperor's token is here. Who dares to be rash?" It was a token with golden edges, and the words, "Ice Emperor's token," were engraved on it. "You," the Xianling sect patriarch was shocked. "Why do you have the Ice Emperor's token?" The other 7 sect leaders' expressions changed drastically as well, but they hurriedly retracted their suppressive auras, clearly not daring to be rash in front of the Ice Emperor's token. "The Ice Emperor's legacy." Lu Qianqian said calmly, "I inherited it." "What? How is that possible?" The 8 sect leaders' eyes were filled with disbelief. The Ice Emperor had disappeared 10,000 years ago, and no one knew if he was dead or alive. Suddenly, someone took out a token and said that she was inheriting his legacy. This was simply unbelievable. Chapter 591. Lu Qianqian took out the token, and the 8 sect masters hurriedly retracted their suppressive aura. Jun Changshao, who was about to crush the opening talisman and pretend to be a bigger one, was stunned. Yi Xingqian's heart stirred as well. In terms of seniority, the Ice Emperor was one of the top powerful figures in the older generation of the Falling Star continent. After he became a martial emperor, he had been in seclusion for a long time, and Yi Xingqian had never seen him before. He did not expect that Lu Qianqian would be able to inherit his legacy today. This was definitely a rare opportunity. Girl. The Xianling sect patriarch said, "Are you speaking the truth? Are you doubting the Ice Emperor's token?" Lu Qianqian's voice was as cold as usual, and there was no emotion in it. The Sect of All Time's disciples felt very comfortable listening to her. It was still the same formula and taste. Our eldest senior sister did not change at all. No. She changed. The cold aura that senior sister emitted was thicker than before, and her aura was even colder. She was becoming more and more like an otherworldly fairy. Fear appeared in the eyes of the giantified little Long Long, and even the surging flames instantly weakened. This was a huge psychological shadow that came from being sealed in ice. Lu Qianqian said, "You can doubt my words, but can you doubt the Ice Emperor's token?" No. The token emitted an unparalleled cold aura. The 8 Wu Huang could confirm that this was definitely the Ice Emperor's token and not an imitation that could be made with just 1 or 2 taels of silver. Lu Qianqian said, "You should all be branches of the sect that the Ice Emperor created back then. Now that I am his successor, why don't you bow down to me?" The 8 Wu Huang's expressions changed instantly. They looked at each other. Even though they were extremely unwilling, they could only cup their fists and say, "Sorry for being impolite." Louder. Jun Changshao said, "I didn't hear you clearly." Seeing that this group of patriarch was very wary of his disciple's token, he started to show off. As for the hard-to-withdraw saber, he had already withdrawn it. Because there was no need to use it, he had saved an opening seal talisman. Seeing Jun Patriarch's arrogant and despotic appearance, the 8 Wu Huang almost rolled up their sleeves, surrounded him, and gave him a good beating. However, with the Ice Monarch's order in front of them, they didn't dare to breathe. 10,000 years ago, the Ice Empress had absolute authority, and no one dared to disobey her. This was especially true for the forces of Lu Province in the northeast. They had all split off from the sect that the Ice Empress had created, and they had always respected and worshipped her as their ancestor. Therefore, they could only cup their fists and say again, "Sorry for the lack of manners." His voice was loud and clear, full of confidence. Jun Changshao said in satisfaction, "That's more like it." He really deserved a beating. If it weren't for the fact that they were separated by a screen, the author would have beaten him up. Lu Qianqian said indifferently, "Still not leaving?" The faces of the 8 Wu Huang instantly darkened. The guy who came to northeast Luzhou to cause trouble hadn't paid a painful price yet. He was really unwilling to leave just like that. "You're not leaving." Jun Changshao said, "Let's go." He had found his eldest disciple and cleaned up the extreme cold palace. He had no more worries and left peacefully with his disciple. "They're leaving just like that?" "Of course. That woman has the Ice Empress order. Seeing the order is like seeing the person. The 8 Patriarch definitely won't dare to act rashly. This sect of all times is really awesome. Their disciple is actually the successor of the Ice Empress." The martial cultivators of Lu Province in the northeast who were standing in the distance all started discussing. At the same time, they realized that the extreme cold palace had completely lost today. The experts of the 2 large organizations hiding in the dark were a little confused. They had originally planned to help Jun Patriarch when he was in danger, but they didn't have the chance to do so. This was also good. If the 2 large organizations appeared, even if they protected Jun Changshao, this matter would instantly escalate from a grudge between 2 sects to a grudge between 2 prefectures. It would only make the problem worse. The conflict ended when Lu Qianqian flashed the Ice Empress order. Jun Patriarch and his disciple could be considered to have escaped unscathed. Speaking of escaping unscathed, it reminded me. Forget it, I'll just explode on the spot. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden mission, Undefeated. You have gained 2,000 contribution points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden mission, undefeated. You have gained 3,000 contribution points. Ding! Contribution points, 200,002,0000. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden mission, undefeated. You have gained hidden rewards, Experience Talisman X1, Supreme Grade Aptitude Modification Fluid X5. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden mission, undefeated. You have gained hidden rewards, Experience Talisman X1, Supreme Grade Aptitude Modification Fluid X1. Undefeated meant that he had killed his way to the extreme cold palace and used his absolute strength to oppress them until they couldn't fight back. Escaping unscathed meant that even if he was surrounded by 8 Wu Huangs, he could still escape with ease and without any losses. Awesome! June Patriarch, who was walking in the ice and snow, shouted loudly. The best thing was the 2 experience talismans and the Supreme Grade Aptitude Modification Fluid. According to his previous experience, after using it, he would be able to break through to the 9th grade sword and martial king. After cultivating for a while and reaching the peak, he would be able to trigger the epic mission. Becoming a martial emperor was just around the corner. Especially the Supreme Grade Aptitude Modification Fluid. After using it, becoming a sword emperor would be easy. The disciples of the Eternal Sect temporarily stopped to rest and reorganize under an ice hill where the cold wind was blowing. After experiencing a battle at the extreme cold palace, although it was fun and satisfying, some of the wolf riders were inevitably injured. Fortunately, they had the protection of their spirit armor and their bodies were extremely strong, so they were only lightly injured. Senior brothers. Li Fei squatted in front of an ice rock, holding his head and shivering. Be gentle. Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others surrounded him, clenching their fists. Their eyes were glowing with a terrifying red light. In the extreme cold palace, not only did they have to divert their attention to fight the enemy, but they also had to defend against the bullets that would come from behind at any time. Su Xiaoma smiled eerily. I was shot 4 times, so I was punched 4 times. Fuck, I was shot 6 times. Li Fei said frantically. Tian Qi gritted his teeth. Although I was only shot twice, they hit my butt. They didn't even turn. If I didn't protect myself in advance, the consequences would be unimaginable. What are you waiting for? Su Xiaoma stepped forward and grabbed Li Tiantian's body. He shouted, brothers, beat him up. Bang! 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 In just a moment, Li Tiantian's head was full of bruises. His eyes narrowed into a line, and he looked as miserable as he could. Damn it! I'll never play with guns again. On the ice hill. Lu Qianxian retracted her gaze from the group of playful junior brothers and said, sorry for making you worry, Sect Master. His words came as a surprise to everyone. It's good that you're fine. Jun Changshao said, however, remember, the sect has been promoted to a sect. In the future, you have to call me Patriarch. Understood, Patriarch, Lu Qianxian said. Jun Changshao asked curiously, how did you inherit the Frost Emperor's legacy? Lu Qianxian said, I fought with the Extreme Cold Palace's elites in the Boundless Ice Sea. I was defeated and escaped with injuries. I accidentally entered the Frost Emperor's place of seclusion. Escaped with injuries? Jun Changxiao's gaze was cold. He injured my sect's eldest disciple and didn't destroy the Extreme Cold Palace. He's lucky. Looking at the angry figure in front of her, Lu Qianxian felt warmth in her heart. Her state of mind, which was already on the verge of breaking, cracked again. Her state of mind, which had been stabilized recently, was completely destroyed. Chapter 592. Actually, the Extreme Cold Palace was also quite unlucky. At first, they thought that Lu Qianxian had a special ice attribute and wanted to recruit her. However, the conflict between the other party and the Snow Track Valley became more and more serious, to the point that it gradually deviated from their original intentions. In the end, it developed to the point that they were wanted, and they encountered each other in the endless ice sea. If the extreme cold palace had stuck to their initial principles and only recruited her, the sect of all times would not have traveled such a long distance to attack them, and they would not have ended up like this. It could be considered as a warning. A warning to the entire continent that the sect of all times was not to be trifled with. Of course. The news that June Patriarch had almost destroyed the extreme cold palace and alarmed the 8th Patriarch would definitely spread like a gust of wind across the entire continent, and would definitely set off a new round of heated discussion. And then? June Changshao continued to ask. Lu Qianqian said, I obtained Senior Ice Emperor's token in his seclusion place, walked out of the endless ice sea, and heard that the Snow Track Valley had been destroyed. From the news that a large number of wolf-riding martial artists had killed their way to the Snow Track Valley, she guessed that it was the Patriarch and her fellow sect members who had done it, so she went to the extreme cold palace. Lu Qianqian understood June Changshao. He must have gotten the news that she was wanted, and then brought people to seek justice for her. Everything was as she guessed. When she arrived at the extreme cold palace, the Patriarch and her fellow sect members were already fighting with the other party. At that moment, Lu Qianqian's state of mind received an unprecedented shock, and her heart as still as water level cracked. She had come to the northeast Lu province to stabilize her state and break through to a higher level, but in the end, it was all for naught. Do you still want to continue training here? June Changshao asked. Lu Qianqian looked at him and said, Can I? There was a faint pleading in those cold and unfeeling words. It had changed. Although it still gave people a very cold feeling, at least it was mixed with human emotions. June Changshao said, If this place can help you break through faster, it's not impossible to stay and train here. Thank you, Patriarch, Lu Qianqian said. But June Changshao said seriously, if you encounter any danger, you must contact the sect immediately. I will not allow anyone to hurt you, not even a strand of your hair. The tone of the last sentence was much heavier. Caw caw caw. An invisible shattering sound rang in Lu Qianqian's heart. Her gaze wavered slightly, then she subconsciously turned around and said in a low voice, Disciple understands. Of course. June Changshao raised his head and said with a sharp gaze, I won't allow any disciple to be bullied by others. The falling snow that filled the sky instantly evaporated under his domineering aura. Lu Qianqian didn't have any plans to follow the Patriarch back to the sect of all times. After all, she had just received the Ice Emperor's inheritance and needed to cultivate in this icy place to break through faster. June Patriarch agreed. As long as the disciples were fine, they could train however they wanted in the northeastern Luzhou. Of course. June Changshao couldn't just leave like that. Since they were already here, they would definitely bring their disciples to have a good time and experience the different local conditions and customs. Not to mention, in this world of ice and snow, there were sceneries everywhere. In the Ice Valley, Zhen Dejuan tasted a mouthful of the strong wine produced in the northeastern Luzhou and said, The wine in the ice field is still strong. He. Su Xiaoma came over with a bowl of wine and said with a trembling smile, Elder Zhen, teach me the array. Get lost. Zhen Dejuan said, Go play somewhere else. Voila! In front of a large pot built on the spot, June Changshao threw in the minced meat that had just been chopped. He waved a big spoon and said, Today, I'll make a special dish for you. Lu Wancher didn't come, and Li Qingyang was too weak, so the cooking job fell on his head. Previously, he led his disciples to kill in the extreme cold palace. Now, he was wearing an apron and cooking in the snow. This was June Changshao. A cruel and merciless devil, a clown in the kitchen. Patriarch Li Tian said, Your cooking skills are far worse than Dudu's. Bang! His entire face caved in, and then with a bang, he crashed into the ice mountain, forming a pie shape. The young girl Devil Ridge Black Hawk withdrew her hand, and the spatial ripples dissipated. She said with a cold face, Anyone who questions my master must accept my, Xiao Maxian's, punishment. Yes. Her name was Xiao Maxian. June Changshao had just given her a new name. Moreover, there was a Western-style prefix. She was called Balala. Girl. June Patriarch seriously said as he stir-fried, "You are a girl, so you must be reserved with your words. If you want to hit someone, you can say, 'Let me have some honey for you.'" Honey? Xiao Maxian was puzzled. What does that mean? It means let me deal with you. June Changshao said. I understand. Xiao Maxian stood up and walked barefoot to the ice mountain. She pointed at the crookedly Tian Tian and proudly said, "Let me have some honey for you." Bang! 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 Feathers filled the sky, wildly bombarding the ice mountain. Su Xiaoma and the others couldn't bear to look. They turned their heads, thinking, Patriarch's contract beast that can transform into human form is even more terrifying than Little Long Long. That's right. Where was Little Long Long? Everyone hurriedly looked around and saw that fellow had returned to its original appearance. It sat proudly on a small ice mountain, with an aura of "I seek defeat, but I am invincible under the heavens." In fact, they were all panicking. Because Lu Qianqian was here, they had to keep their distance. Patriarch's cooking skills are good. The food was ready. The disciples gathered around, praising it. Thus, in the snow valley, thousands of disciples gathered together to eat. The scene was very beautiful. Qianqian. June Changshao said, "Your junior apprentice brother came all the way to northeast Lu province to fight with others for you. As a senior apprentice sister, shouldn't you say something? Eldest senior apprentice sister is in trouble, so we are here to help. This is what we should do." Su Xiaoma grinned. Li Fei smiled. "We are all from the same sect and are as close as brothers and sisters. If we don't help each other when we are in danger, who else can we rely on?" That's right. June Changshao said, "As disciples of the sect of all times, we should be as close as brothers and sisters. We should share blessings and hardships together." Smack! Lu Qianqian walked to the stone table and removed the mud seal on the wine jar. She poured a bowl of wine and raised it gently, her cold gaze sweeping across her fellow disciples. She didn't say anything. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others understood what their senior apprentice sister meant, so they raised their wine cups. Lu Qianqian drank the fiery wine in one gulp. Swoosh! Swoosh! Li Qingyang and the others drank the wine in unison. They didn't communicate verbally. Everything was in their hearts, in the fiery wine. In the world of flying snow, a beautiful melody sounded and slowly sang, the sea laughs, the tides on both sides of the shore, floating and sinking with the waves, only remembering this day, the sky laughs, the tides of the world, who loses and who wins, only heaven knows, eldest senior apprentice sister. On the ice mountain, Li Qingyang and the others rode on the hurricane wolves. They looked back and said, "We will go back first." The howl of the wolves resounded through the sky. Streaks of blue flowing light rushed across the ice field like a tide. Screech! The black eagle of the Demon Ridge flapped its wings and flew across the sky. June Changshao sat on its back and crushed 2 experienced talismans. The 9th grade king of sword and martial arts erupted. He channeled his Dantian and said, "Those who offend the sect of all times will be killed." His voice had a strong penetrating power, echoing in the sky of northeast Lu province. Martial cultivators 5,000 to 6,000 miles away could hear him clearly. Chapter 593. What? At the Demon Fiend Sect's branch, the leader stood up and said in disbelief, "The sect of all times almost destroyed the Extreme Coldness Palace?" "Yes, leader," his subordinate said. The leader sat down, his face full of disbelief. According to the information he received, June Changshao only brought about 1,000 disciples. How could such a small force almost destroy a fourth-rate sect with tens of thousands of people? Moreover, that was someone else's territory. Who didn't know that martial cultivators who cultivated the ice element were extremely strong in a world of ice and snow? It was simply a fantasy to almost destroy it with just 1,000 people. Jun Changshao and his disciples did the impossible. At this moment, the news about the battle at the Extreme Coldness Palace swept through the entire Falling Star continent like a storm. After many forces learned about it, they all widened their eyes. Especially when they learned that before Jun Changshao left, he shouted in the sky, "Those who offend the sect of all times will be destroyed." A warning. A blatant warning. How arrogant was it to go to someone else's territory and shout such words? Sect of all times? On a certain misty mountain peak, an immortal-like old man stroked his beard and said, "Interesting." Patriarch. A middle-aged man said respectfully, "Recently, this sect in the southwest Yangzhou has done many unexpected things and is in the limelight." The old man smiled and said, "The birth of every sect with potential will cause ripples like a stone falling into water. However, there are very few that can truly establish themselves in the world. There is no need to pay attention to them. Moreover." He paused for a moment. Then, with a wave of his hand, a chess piece appeared in his skinny fingers. He gently placed it on the chessboard and said, "Right now, the Falling Star continent is like a pool of stagnant water. We need such vigorous forces to shake the world." The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly and said, "Patriarch thinks highly of the sect of all times? It doesn't matter whether I think highly of it or not." The old man murmured, "It still depends on its own fortune." In the past, the first thing the cultivators of the prefecture would ask when they met was if you ate. Now, it was if you heard. If someone asked, what did they hear? He would definitely be looked down upon and viewed as an outlier. The sect of all times had caused such a huge commotion that it had spread across the entire Starfall continent. Almost everyone was talking about it and spreading the news. It was really going to be a trend of, who in the world doesn't know you? Some people thought that he was arrogant. Some believed that newborn calves were not afraid of tigers. In short, the sect of all times was like an author writing a book. It was impossible for it to receive absolute praise, and it was inevitable that it would be criticized behind its back by the martial artists of the various provinces. I can accept the honor. At the same time, he would also accept all slander and abuse. However, with Jun Changxiao's character, he would never accept slander and abuse. Otherwise, he would pick up his weapon and fight with them. The sect of all times did not have a good reputation in the various states. In southwest Yangzhou, he was the idol and hero of countless martial cultivators. Since ancient times, how many sects from other sects had invaded their own territories to cause trouble? Now that they had fought their way out of the provincial gate and crushed the fourth-rate force of another sect, it was definitely satisfying. For a moment, the reputation of the sect of all times had reached its peak in southwest Yangzhou, becoming the holy land of martial arts that young men and women yearned for. Father, mother, I am determined to become a disciple of the sect of all times in the future. 2 years ago, these words would have been firmly rejected by the parents. Now, not only were they happy that their child had finally grown up, they would also encourage him to persevere in his dreams. When a sect had enough prestige, it would impact the lives and culture of the surrounding areas. The 8 cities of Azure Sun County were swept up with the wind of the sect of all times. First of all, there was a change in clothing. The strict dressing was abandoned and gradually changed to the simple and lively uniform of the sect of all times. This kind of change in clothing was the most popular among the upper class. When visiting friends and relatives or holding grand banquets, the men would wear short shirts to appear simple and concise, while the women would dress in short skirts to show off their good figures. Xie Guanquan also made a bold and decisive change in clothing. He chose to wear light clothes and was more energetic than before. Due to the impact of the city lord and the upper class, the new clothing trend began to reach the ordinary people. The traditional clothing of the Falling Star continent gave people a dull feeling. Inspired by the school uniform of the Eternal Sect, it gradually became colorful, like 100 flowers competing with each other. As a result, walking on the main street of Azure Sun City and looking at the different colors of the pedestrians, one would feel as if they had entered a modern city. This kind of atmosphere was gradually eroding the surrounding towns and even spreading to other counties. It wouldn't be long before the entire southwest Yangzhou would be replaced by this kind of atmosphere and become younger and more energetic. As the initiator of the cultural transmission, Jun Changshao had been thinking about a problem after returning to the sect. First, he defeated the 5 sects of the West Cloud State and dealt with the Extreme Coldness Palace. Now that he had gained enough prestige, why not make it bigger? Since I've already caused a ruckus, I might as well let more people understand that the sect of all times is not to be trifled with, not to be trifled with. Once this thought arose, it couldn't be suppressed at all. Jun Patriarch summoned Zhen Dejuan and told him his thoughts. He asked, Elder Zhen, what do you think? Pa! Zhen Dejuan slammed the table and said, do you still need to say it? If you want to play, then play big. If you want to blow up, then blow up more. The two lunatics looked at each other and immediately shook their shoulders and laughed evilly. Shuirengui. Jun Changshao's voice suddenly sounded in the sect. Shuirengui, who was training the members, was startled. The corner of his mouth twitched. We just came back. Don't tell me we're going to another state to cause trouble again. Gather 1,000 soldiers. Jun Changshao's voice sounded. Follow me to the Demon Fiend Sect's branch. Yes. Shuirengui received the order. The 1,000 members who had just returned rode the Hurricane Wolves and rushed out of Iron Bone Mountain, heading for the Demon Fiend Sect's branch. Jun Changshao didn't ride the Demon Ridge Black Eagle this time. Instead, he changed to the Hurricane Wolf King. On the way, he said indifferently, it's time to collect the debt with interest, Demon Fiend Sect's branch. For the past few days, the great branch leader had been unable to eat or sleep well because the sect of all times had almost destroyed the Extreme Cold Palace. This meant that this once unrated sect was now unimaginably strong. If his disciples were bullied and dared to travel thousands of miles to fight with others, then Jun Changshao was definitely someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. In the past, the sect had once spied on his Green Dragon Crescent Blade. He had even sent Jiang Ye and the others to Iron Bone Mountain. Once he had the strength, it wouldn't be a surprise if he brought people to kill. No! The great branch leader stood up and said in a deep voice, we have to inform the headquarters as soon as possible. I hope to send a powerhouse to oversee the southwest Yangzhou branch. Great branch leader. At this moment, a subordinate reported, Jiang Ye has come to see you. The great branch leader was stunned. Why is he not a beggar in Jiangjia town? Could it be that he is also worried that Jun Changshao will seek revenge and doesn't dare to live in the town? Yama King Jiang strode in and cupped his hands. Great branch leader. The great branch leader took a sip of tea, a proud expression appearing between his brows. Although his strength couldn't compare to Jiang Ye's, as the branch leader of the Devil Fiend Sect's branch, his position was higher. Great branch leader. Jiang Ye said, is there any news about the person I am looking for? Pa, the great branch leader placed the teacup on the table and said impatiently, if there is news, I will inform you. Jiang Ye sat down and said with a cold gaze, Jiang Ye, have served the Devil Fiend Sect for so many years, but every time I get a perfunctory response. I just want to ask, are you helping me find someone? Jiang Ye. The subordinate next to him said coldly, watch your tone. Ka. Jiang Ye stood up and raised the Desert Eagle. With a bang, he shot the opponent's head and said coldly, today I came to tell you that I won't do it anymore. Chapter 594. The great branch leader stood up and saw his subordinate fall to the ground. His eyes were filled with shock as he said, God. God might flame cannon. It seems. Jun Changshao walked in from outside and sat at the head of the table. He crossed his legs and said, Great branch leader inquired about my sect of all times quite a bit. You even know about the God might flame cannon. The great branch leader's expression changed as he said in shock, why are you here? Jun Changshao looked at Jiang Ye and said with interest, does he mean that I can't come? Yes. Jiangya said, Patriarch. Patriarch? This guy called him Patriarch. Let me formally introduce you. Jun Changshao pointed at Jiangya and said, I am an elder of the sect of all times. I also thank the Demon Fiend sect for taking care of me all these years. The great branch leader said angrily, Jiangya, you are openly betraying the Demon Fiend sect. Don't you know what will happen to you? Sorry. Jiangya shrugged and said, I am not a disciple of the Demon Fiend sect. There is no betrayal. Despicable guy. The great branch leader was furious. Boom! At this moment, a loud explosion came from outside. The door with the plaque Demon Fiend Sect branch leader was smashed to pieces by Xiao Ziji. Kill! The disciples of the sect of all times rushed in with swords in hand. The disciples of the Demon Fiend sect who rushed out of the room suddenly faced an enemy attack and tried to counterattack. In the end, they were all killed in a single move. This was not a branch after all. Their strength was barely comparable to a sixth-rate sect. The disciples of the sect of all times had just come from a fourth-rate sect. Fighting with them was simply not knowing how to write the word death. It's over, it's over. The great branch leader's heart turned cold. He guessed right. Jun Changshao was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. However, he did not expect that the other party would kill his way here as soon as he returned from Lu province in the northeast, not giving him any time to prepare. Great Branch Master. Jun Changshao interlocked his fingers and said, You should know why I'm here this time, right? Pucci. Pucci. The people in the hall were talking and laughing while the disciples outside the hall were killing each other. It was a scene of harmony on one side and cruelty on the other. The big branch leader's complexion became more and more unsightly. His palms and feet were drenched in sweat. This was not a symptom of kidney deficiency. This was due to fear. Strangely enough, Jun Changshao, who was sitting beside him, did not release any of his aura, but he felt an immense pressure. Even his breathing became hurried. If the big branch master knew that the person in front of him was a genuine 9th-grade sword and martial king, he would understand why he was so afraid. Jun Patriarch. He gathered his courage and said, This. During this period of time, my Demon Fiend sect has not offended the sect of all times. What about before? The big branch master trembled and said, Jun Patriarch, I was just following orders. When he had just received the order from headquarters, he had sent Jiangya and the others to Iron Bone Mountain. He had not been so fearful. Right. Jun Changshao thought of something and said, A while ago, how was the fight between your Demon Fiend sect and the Taikuan sect over the Spirit Stone Vein? This guy knew about this matter. It must have been Jiangya who told him. Speak, Jun Changshao said in a low voice. The big branch master hurriedly said, Jun Patriarch, my Demon Fiend sect repelled the Taikuan sect and defended the Spirit Stone Vein. Where is the vein? Jun Changshao said. This, bang, a stream of light shot out, directly blasting the big branch master's leg. His body suddenly tilted, half kneeling on the ground. His expression suddenly became fierce. Jun Changshao pressed the smoking muzzle of the Desert Eagle to his head and said coldly, You must answer my question in full detail. You have no right to refuse. Devil. The big branch master endured the intense pain and the burning sensation on his forehead, and said with a fierce expression, Jun Changshao, if you dare to kill me, you will become an enemy of the Demon Fiend sect. This was a ruthless person. Today, he fell into his hands. It would be difficult to leave alive. Anyway, he was going to die anyway. Why not show some manliness? Seriously. Jun Changshao said, I really want you to live and witness how the Demon Fiend sect is destroyed by the sect of all times. But, bang, pulling the trigger, it directly penetrated the big branch master's head and said, If you want to be a tough guy, I will definitely fulfill your wish. When dealing with enemies, Jun Changshao really wasn't the least bit soft-hearted. It was a pity for the unyielding big branch master. Originally, it was just a symbol of manliness. If June Patriarch played some tricks, he would definitely immediately surrender. But in the end, he didn't even get a second chance to ask, directly shooting like this. On the Yellow Springs Road. He was definitely crying and shouting, "Big brother, can't we play the cards according to the routine next time?" Hall Masterly Jun Changshao took back the Desert Eagle and transmitted, "Investigate the location of the Spirit Stone vein that the Demon Fiend Sect and the Supreme Kun Sect are fighting over. The sooner the better." Yes. Li Luoqiu used the sound transmission technique to contact the intelligence bases of the cities in southwest Yangzhou. Spies in northeast Luzhou might make mistakes, but once they started operating in their own territory, there would be absolutely no mistakes. Let's go. Jun Changshao stepped over the big branch master's corpse. Just as he walked out of the hall, a disciple walked up and put a mink coat on him. Then, he put on a pair of dazzling sunglasses and swaggered away. Kakik. Outside the Demon Fiend Sect branch, the madman Zhen Dejuan covered his face and laughed strangely like a madman. Then, he directly detonated the thunder array. Boom! After a loud bang, the Demon Fiend Sect branch that had been established in southwest Yangzhou for nearly 100 years was razed to the ground. No! Jun Changshao suddenly turned around and looked at the ruins that had been blown into a deep pit. He bit his finger and collapsed. "The treasures in the branch haven't been taken away." Patriarch. Li Qingyang whispered, "The first thing this disciple did when he came in was to plunder the treasures and put them all in the spatial ring." Jun Patriarch, who was originally in despair, immediately recovered his pretentious manner. He patted his second disciple's shoulder and said with relief, "You've got my heart, you've got my heart." Bang! The gate of the Godslayer temple was blasted open. Several members fell to the ground in pain. Elder Zhan and Guo Digang, who were in the middle of a discussion, heard the commotion and hurried out of the hall. Their eyes were filled with killing intent. Who dares to spread? They didn't say the word wild. That was because Jun Changshao had walked in under the escort of so many disciples. His powerful aura had caused them to tremble in fear. To eradicate the Demon Fiend Sect branch in southwest Yangzhou, this Godslayer temple branch must be uprooted as well. In front of the life and death arena. Elder Bai, who came from the Godslayer temple headquarters, once said arrogantly, "Today, Iron Bone must be removed from the Jianghu." At that time, Jun Changshao was very angry, but the sect didn't have the strength, so he could only choose to swallow his anger. In the end, he relied on Elder Wei's bravado to scare that guy away. "Today, my disciple and I have the strength. The old debts of the past must be settled today." Jun Patriarch. Elder Zhan said in a deep voice, "What do you mean by this?" Bang! Xiao Ziji pulled the trigger. The bullet passed through the void and directly smashed the plaque with the words Godslayer Temple hanging in the hall. "Still don't understand?" "It's fine." Jun Changshao raised his hand and told them in the most straightforward words, "Destroy." Chapter 595. Destroyed. Two simple words, but how arrogant. The God-slaying Hall branch leader and the two elders had ugly expressions. Since the establishment of the branch in southwest Yangzhou, no one had dared to openly bring people to kill them. No one dared to provoke the Devil Fiend Sect's branch either. But now, wasn't it razed to the ground? Jun Patriarch was very strong, but he might not dare to fight with a third-rate evil sect, but he could still deal with these small fries. Jun Changshao. Guo Digang said coldly, "Are you declaring war on my God-slaying hall?" "You can think of it that way." Jun Changshao waved his hand, and the disciples behind him swarmed in. Guo Digang's eyes flashed with killing intent. He immediately activated his martial king cultivation and landed on the training field with a heavy aura. However, just as he landed, Yi Xingqian appeared in front of him with the cloud-treading steps. He raised one hand and said coldly, "Die." Whoosh! The seven mysterious light break instantly condensed and shot out a beam of light from his palm. It mercilessly pierced through Guo Digang's chest with great force, and a shocking wound appeared. Domineering. No emotions. You, Before his consciousness disappeared, Guodigang's eyes were filled with fear. When he went to Mount Iron Bone, he and Elder Guo had fought with Jun Changshao. But now, they were killed in an instant by this disciple. Elder Guo! Elder Zhen roared angrily. Go to hell with him. Yi Xingqian raised his hand. Scorching flames whizzed out, turning into an explosive slash of light that slashed down from above. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, Elder Zhen was cut in half by the red sky raging flame slash, and a huge hole appeared in the hall behind him. 2 martial kings, killed in 2 moves. Yi Xingqian, who had broken through to martial king, was simply explosive. The God-slaying hall branch leader, who was sent flying by the scorching wave, was shocked. At this moment, the only thing he could do was to watch his sect members being mercilessly killed by the Sect of All Time's disciples, and then fall to the ground one by one. Art comes from explosions. Zhen Dejuan stood outside the God-slaying temple branch base, spread his arms, and said with a ferocious expression, "Please enjoy it to your heart's content." Boom! Lightning flashed and the earth shook. Under the cloud of dust, Jun Changshao led his disciples away. Just like how he came in a hurry and left in a hurry, he didn't take away a single cloud, only the countless treasures of the other party. Patriarch. Li Luochio's voice sounded in his ears, "We found the demon fiend sect's spirit stone mine." Jun Changshao's lips curled into a faint sneer. He then turned around and led the 1,000 disciples towards the location of the mineral lode. A spirit stone mine. Counted as interest for the demon fiend sect's debt. On this day, the news of 2 third-rate heretical sect branches being razed to the ground spread out, and the entire southwestern Yangzhou was shaken. What? After receiving the information, Yi Tianxing exclaimed, "The demon fiend sect and the deicide shrine branch were destroyed by the Sect of All Times? Not bad." Elder Zhou's mouth twitched, the branch stronghold was even razed to the ground. He's too reckless. Yi Tianxing frowned. Elder Zhen said bitterly, "If this kid didn't act recklessly, how would he dare to go to the northeastern Lu prefecture and destroy the extreme cold palace's place? If this continues, I'm afraid he'll anger everyone." Elder Zhou said worriedly. Although the matter in northeastern Lu prefecture had temporarily come to an end, the other party definitely wouldn't let it go. Now that he had provoked 2 more third-rate heretical sects, Jun Changshao was forcing himself into a dead end. However, they didn't know that Jun Patriarch's meaning was to strike while the iron was hot. If he wanted to play, he would play big. Heavens! The 2 heretical sect branches were destroyed by the Sect of All Times. This is openly provoking the Demon Fiend sect and the deicide shrine. I have a premonition that soon, countless experts will kill their way to southwestern Yangzhou. Damn, do you still need a premonition? They'll definitely come. Endless Ice Sea. The extreme cold palace master knelt in an ice valley and said with a wooden chair in his eyes, "The extreme cold palace was almost destroyed by Jun Changshao. Grand Elder, please come out of seclusion and uphold justice." Boom! The glacier in the ice valley exploded, and a white light flew out and landed in front of him. It was an old man in his 70s with a head full of white hair. A chilling aura gathered around him, and he said coldly, "I must meet such an arrogant junior." Swoosh! The white light pierced the sun, and cold air swept across 1,000 miles, causing everyone to shiver from the cold. This aura, the Xianling sect patriarch sensed it and exclaimed, "Half-step Wu Sheng. It must be the Grand Elder of the extreme cold palace. With such anger, he's probably going to southwestern Yangzhou to settle scores with the Sect of All Times." The Shanghan sect patriarch said with a frown. These fourth-rate sects all had powerful elders, but they all chose to go into seclusion to pursue higher martial skills. They rarely appeared unless the sect was in danger. The extreme cold palace met with such a disaster and was almost destroyed. If the Grand Elder who was in seclusion did nothing, it would be unreasonable. However, the disciples of the Sect of All Times had the Ice Thearch as order, and it was probably not appropriate to find trouble with the Sect of All Times. Lu Qianqian, who was cultivating in the extreme mysterious ice pool, frowned when she sensed the cold aura from the endless ice sea. Demon Fiend Sect Headquarters. The Patriarch, Yin Shangye, said with a cold gaze, "How dare you destroy my sect's branch in southwestern Yangzhou? Jun Changshao, you're really bold. Report." At that moment, a subordinate entered the hall and said, "The mine in southwestern Yangzhou has been occupied by the Sect of all times. All 1,000 disciples have been killed." Yin Shangye, who could still tolerate it, felt his head explode when he heard this news. "Third elder, fourth elder," he said in a low voice, "head to southwestern Yangzhou and head to the Sect of all times." Patriarch. An elder hurriedly said, "The Sect of all times is protected by the Certification Center and the Heavenly Mandate Academy. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us to send people over. If I don't retaliate after being bullied to the face, what right do I have to lead the entire sect?" Yin Shangye said angrily. If it was just the branch being destroyed, he could tolerate it. But the mine being occupied was a great loss. He couldn't take this lying down. He had to make the Sect of all times pay the price. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two Wu Huang from the Demon Fiend Sect headquarters turned into streamers and sped away. Perhaps they knew what the Sect of all times had done in northeastern Luzhou, so they sent Wu Huang at their peak. A big battle array. At the same time, the Deicide Hall headquarters also sent masters. Although their losses couldn't be compared to the Demon Fiend Sect, they also sent two Wu Huang at their peak. Of course. The two evil patriarch knew that if the Certification Center and the Heavenly Mandate Academy insisted on protecting the Sect of all times, they might not be able to destroy it. But they had to put pressure on them. For Wu Huang at their peak was the greatest pressure. Really. The pressure was immense. Yi Tianqing and Situ Haoyun both frowned when they heard the news. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, a majestic aura suddenly emerged from the City Lord's office. The two of them exclaimed, "City Lord Mu has come out of seclusion." This aura, Situ Haoyun said solemnly, "He has stepped into the level of Wu Sheng." Yi Tianqing said in disbelief, "It's been a long time since a master of this level appeared in southwestern Yangzhou. City Lord Mu is indeed the legend of the entire state." Father. In the academy, Mu Honglian's eyes were filled with joy. Whoosh! A middle-aged man with a dignified appearance stood in the sky and transmitted his voice, "While I was in seclusion, has southwest Yangzhou been peaceful? With Jun Patriarch here, peaceful my ass."